Chapter 2490. When Seation broke through to the ancestor realm, his heart was filled with pride and confidence. However, all of this was like a flash in the pan for Seation. Before he could be happy for long, the heavenly punishment shattered the illusion in his heart. When Seation broke through to the ancestor realm, his heart was filled with pride and confidence. However, all of this was like a flash in the pan for Seation. Before he could be happy for long, the heavenly punishment shattered the illusion in his heart. He couldn't even pass the heavenly punishment. But all of this was very strange because even if Seation was weak, being in the false ancestor realm, he couldn't even pass the second heavenly punishment. Moreover, before the second heavenly punishment fell, a ray of light entered the heavenly punishment, causing the second heavenly punishment's power to increase by several dozen times. Like this, Seation wasn't able to receive the second heavenly punishment. In the heavenly punishment, the power increased by several dozen times was not something Seation could withstand. The tragic Seation had just broken through to the ancestor realm, but in the next second, he had been turned to ashes by the terrifying heavenly punishment. Seation had died, and the cause of all of this was Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, who had been fighting with Hector Mo, had taken advantage of Hector Mo not being on guard to send out a finger, attacking the heavenly punishment above the evil god palace. Hector Mo wasn't prepared for this at all, so naturally he couldn't stop it. It was because of Lin Yuan's attack that the heavenly punishment's power increased. The heavenly punishment above the evil god palace was aimed at Seation, but with Lin Yuan's attack, the heavenly punishment also included Lin Yuan. Like this, with Lin Yuan's strength, the heavenly punishment's power increased. Actually, this was a mechanism set up by the heavenly laws to ensure the fairness of the heavenly punishment. No cultivator could rely on external help to pass the heavenly punishment. Otherwise, they would be punished by the heavenly laws. Once someone made a move to help, the heavenly punishment's power would increase according to that person's strength, ensuring the fairness of the heavenly punishment. So when Lin Yuan attacked the heavenly punishment, it made the heavenly punishment think that Lin Yuan wanted to help Seation pass the heavenly punishment. So, the second heavenly punishment's power increased by several dozen times. To put it bluntly, the second heavenly punishment was not set based on Seation, but rather Lin Yuan. Like this, with Seation's strength, it was impossible for him to resist Lin Yuan's heavenly punishment. So being killed by the heavenly punishment was something that could not be blamed for. It could be said that he had been completely tricked by Lin Yuan. Moreover, even in the final moment, Seation didn't understand why this heavenly punishments would suddenly increase. Even in death, Seation didn't know that he had been tricked to death by Lin Yuan. Seeing Seation being submerged in heavenly punishment, Lin Yuan revealed a treacherous smile. He didn't feel that his actions were despicable at all. This was also the tradition of the Cloud Palace. It was also the reason why the Cloud Palace's enemies were helpless and fearful of them. Apart from being crazy, the Cloud Palace also had all sorts of tricks up their sleeves. They did not play by the rules. They could spend a lot of money, but they could also do some shady business. This was the evaluation of Cloud Palace by the other universes. Seeing Lin Yuan trap Seation to death, Emohi roared with a dark expression, "Lin Yuan, you're despicable." Despicable? Is your brain damaged? What is there to be despicable about? He was weak and couldn't take the heavenly punishment. What does that have to do with me? Stop wasting words. Let's continue fighting. After tricking Seation to death, hearing Emohi's angry roar, Lin Yuan gave a cold laugh and charged at Emohi. Seation's death was just a small interlude for Lin Yuan. For this kind of fellow, it was fine if he died. Lin Yuan wouldn't care at all. The reason why Emohi's heart ached was because of the resources he had given Seation. It wasn't that he was pained about Seation's death. To Emohi, Seation's life or death did not matter to him. What Emohi was pained about was those resources. He had given Seation all those resources to let him break through to the ancestor realm, but in the end, it was all for naught. Although Seation did succeed in the end, he didn't even make a single bubble before disappearing. What was going on here? His resources were like meat buns thrown at a dog, never coming back. If he knew this would be the result, he definitely wouldn't have helped Xietian break through to the ancestor realm. If he died, then he died. What did it have to do with him? Of course, he did not expect Lin Yuan to do such a shameless thing. A respected ancestor realm expert, the #1 palace master of the Cloud 9 palaces, the #2 person of Cloud Palace, actually dared to do something like this. Where was his face? Did he really not treat himself as a person? This was something that even he wouldn't necessarily do. As a demonic cultivator, he knew that people needed face and tree bark. Moreover, if this matter was spread, it wouldn't be a good thing. As an ancestor realm expert, he still needed this bit of face. In the beginning, when it was Lin Yuan, he didn't feel any pressure at all. What face? What skin? He didn't want it. What was the use of these things? He had already thrown them away. Lin Yuan's face turned ashen. He had finally seen the people of Cloud Palace. It was true that they were all strong, but their characters were also crazy. They would fight to the death at the slightest provocation, exchanging life for life, but it was also true that they were despicable and shameless. A respected ancestor realm expert was no better than a street thug. He was incomparably angry, but Lin Yuan was much happier. As long as it was something that could make he suffer, Lin Yuan was very willing to do it. Both sides were fighting fiercely. On Gong Nantian's side, he had already killed 2 evil god palaces' evil sovereigns in a short period of time. Yin Tong and the other 2 evil god palace experts were horrified. They couldn't fight at all. Moreover, it seemed like Gong Nantian hadn't used his full strength yet. Not only that, the many experts of the Great Thousand World, under the leadership of Jun Wuya and the other sovereigns, were constantly attacking the evil god palace. Without Yin Tong, Xietian, and the other evil sovereigns, the evil path cultivators naturally couldn't stop Jun Wuya and the others. In front of the powerful strength of Jun Wuya and the others, the ordinary evil path cultivators couldn't do anything at all. For a time, the Great Thousand World side had the momentum of sweeping away the evil god palace, while the evil god palace cultivators were constantly retreating. Seeing that the evil god palace was about to fall, the evil god palace and he didn't have any advantage at all in the battle with Xiao Chun and the others. In fact, they were at a disadvantage. For example, the evil spirits weren't Xiao Chen's opponent at all. In just a few months, Xiao Chen's strength had steadily surpassed the evil spirits, and there was a big gap between the two of them. Judging from the current situation, there really was a hint of the evil god palace's destruction. If this continued, it was likely that it would be like what Lin Yuan had said: a single battle would decide the outcome of the battle. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 2491. On the other hand, Jun Wuya and the others led the Great Thousand Worlds experts to attack the evil god palace like a hot knife through butter, attracting the attention of many evil god palace cultivators. Even so, they were unable to withstand the attacks of the Great Thousand Worlds experts. On the other side, in the battle between Lin Yuan, He, Lin Hu, Chi, and the others, the evil god palace and devil abyss weren't able to gain any advantage. Especially the evil god palace. 2 of their archdevils had already been killed by Gong Nantian. If things continued to develop like this, the remaining 3 archdevils would also be killed. Looking at Xiao Chun and the evil spirits, even though the evil spirits had broken through to the Emperor realm, they still weren't Xiao Chen's opponent. In front of Xiao Chun, they were completely suppressed and had already fallen into a disadvantageous position. There were also Lin Feng, Lin Shui, and Mu Jun. There were 5 people from the evil god palace who could stop them. Zi Shi and Qi Mei were already seriously injured and couldn't compete with Lin Feng and Mu Jun. It could be said that the evil god palace was completely at a disadvantage. Even with the help of Yuan, they were on the verge of collapsing. The evil spirits were the most unwilling at this time. They were originally full of confidence, but who would have thought that their little bit of progress was nothing in front of Xiao Chun? They couldn't even show off. Moreover, with the death of their father, Xietian, the evil spirits were filled with grief and indignation. They were full of confidence not long ago, but now they were gradually becoming desperate. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. In the face of Xiao Qian's overwhelming advantage, the evil spirits tried their best to resist. However, under the difference in strength, the evil spirit's resistance was like a fat arm blocking a car. It had no effect at all. The gap between the two was not small now. Not only in terms of cultivation, but also in other aspects, Xiao Qian was much stronger than the evil spirits. Needless to say, Xiao Qian's fleshly body had already reached the peak of the imperishable stage. Phantasms were no match for him. Furthermore, as a sword cultivator, Xiao Qian's mastery of the Tao of the sword surpassed phantasms. Back in the primal chaos realm, Xiao Qian's Tao of the sword had already broken through the swordless heart level with Bai Tao's help. However, Phantasm clearly hadn't done so yet. Therefore, the gap between the two of them was very obvious. As the battle continued, the evil spirits felt more and more powerless. It was as if they could not stop Xiao Qian at all. With a casual slash of Xiao Qian's sword, the evil spirits had to use all their strength to block it. Xiao Qian's sword seemed ordinary, but in fact, it was extremely terrifying. Its power was not something the evil spirits could compare to. In just a few months, Xiao Qian's strength had not improved to such a level. This was something that the evil spirits had never expected. At the same time, the evil spirits could not accept this result. One had to know that when they first met, Xiao Qian's strength was not as good as theirs. Later on, although Xiao Qian caught up to them, he was at most on par with them. But now, Xiao Qian had completely crushed them. In fact, the evil spirits did not realize that the reason Xiao Qian could improve so much was not because he was more talented than the evil spirits. It was entirely due to luck. If Xiao Qian had not been so despicable and entered the spatial black hole, Xiao Qian would not have gone to the primordial world. In that case, Xiao Qian would not have been able to obtain many of the opportunities that followed. If a warrior wanted to achieve something other than talent and hard work, opportunities and luck were also indispensable. A person who was talented but had extremely bad luck would also not be able to achieve much. After all, many times when others were lucky enough to obtain an opportunity, it might be equivalent to 100 years or even several hundred years of bitter cultivation. As such, others would naturally improve faster than others. Seeing that the evil spirits were gradually losing, a murderous intent flashed in Xiao Qian's eyes. He said to the evil spirits indifferently, "Evil spirits, you're right. It's time to end it today." The battle between good and evil that had changed the entire great thousand world beyond recognition was indeed time to end it. Such a long battle was indeed a heavy burden to the great thousand world. Hearing Xiao Qian's words, the evil spirits' brows jumped up. They did not doubt Xiao Qian's words. If it was before, the evil spirits would have snorted in disdain. But now, Xiao Qian indeed had the strength to kill them. This was not a joke at all. But what was faster was that as soon as Xiao Qian's voice fell on the other side, Gong Nantian had also successfully killed Yin Tong. With Yin Tong's death, the 5 evil god palaces' evil sovereigns that Gong Nantian was fighting were all killed. Suddenly losing Xie Tian and 5 evil sovereigns was definitely a large blow to the evil god palace. Even if no one from the other universes interfered at this time, the evil path would not be able to cause any big waves. Moreover, this was clearly not the end. Following the result of Gong Nantian's battle, Mu Jun, who was fighting Qi Mei, said with a cold smile, "After playing for so long, it's about time to end it." After saying this, Mu Jun formed a seal with his hands, and a black hole slowly formed in front of him. At the same time, a strong suction force kept pulling Qi Mei, as if it wanted to swallow her. "Heaven devouring," he softly muttered. Hearing Mu Jun's words, Qi Mei's face was filled with fear. She looked at Qi Mei with watery eyes and said with a delicate and charming appearance, "Don't kill me. I'll do whatever you want me to do." This appearance of Qi Mei was indeed very charming, very attractive to men. If it was any other man, they might really be attracted to her. However, Qi Mei had clearly chosen the wrong target this time. Mu Jun did not hesitate at all and directly sucked Chi Mei into the black hole. This black hole was not a void, but rather a small world that Mu Jun had created. There was a void storm inside that could kill any cultivator under the Ancestor Realm. As long as one's cultivation was below the Ancestor Realm, there was no chance of survival. Chi Mei never would have thought that her charm technique would not work on Mu Jun at all. She also never would have thought that Mu Jun was gay. He was not interested in women at all. Chi Mei's seduction in front of Mu Jun was like a burly man using seduction in front of Xiao Chun. What could it do? She had not chosen the right target, and Mu Jun would not show any mercy. He would only ruthlessly destroy the flower. After Chi Mei's death, Mu Jun faintly smiled, and then looked at Xiao Chun, who was fighting with the evil spirits. His eyes revealed a touch of love as he thought to himself, "Xiao Chun, darling, one day I will let you know that true love is between the same sex." Xiao Chun, who was in the middle of a fierce battle, suddenly couldn't help but shudder for some reason. It was a very strange feeling, as if he was being remembered by a dog, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. In a chapter. Chapter 2492. Mu Jun looked at Xiao Chun affectionately, and Xiao Chun couldn't help but shiver. On the other side, Zishi's face was filled with grief when he saw Chi Mei die. Mu Jun looked at Xiao Chun affectionately, and Xiao Chun couldn't help but shiver. On the other side, Zishi's face was filled with grief when he saw Chi Mei die. When Lin Feng saw the change in Zishi's expression, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, you'll see her soon. Then, you'll have a companion on the road to the underworld." Hearing this, Zishi's eyes burned with fury. He glared at Lin Feng and shouted, "You're courting death." However, Lin Feng didn't care about Zishi's anger at all. He raised his spear and attacked Zishi. As Lin Yun's only son, Lin Feng had obviously learned everything from Lin Yun. His spear was like a dragon, and with his cultivation of the Low Emperor realm, he could easily suppress Zishi. As he thrust his spear forward, the spear turned into a huge golden dragon and swallowed Zishi in one gulp. Just like Mu Jun, Lin Feng also killed Zishi easily. After Gongnan Tian, Lin Feng and Mu Jun's battle ended. Mo He, who was fighting Lin Yuan, looked extremely gloomy. His eyes flashed coldly as he cursed under his breath. A bunch of idiots. The evil god palace's cultivators had been killed so quickly, which made Mo He furious. They were just a bunch of ants. He had wasted so much effort to kill them. Initially, Mo He had been full of confidence about this trip to the vast 1,000 domains. However, the outcome had given him a tight slap in the face. He had never imagined that this would happen. However, it was useless to say anything now. They had lost, and the evil god palace had been completely destroyed. It was impossible to turn the situation around unless the Demon Abyss sect sent reinforcements. But that was impossible. Even if the sect leader of the Demon Abyss sect was willing to send reinforcements, Mo He and the others couldn't afford to wait. Didn't he see that Gongnan Tian was already looking at him? Gongnan Tian could be said to be completely free now, and he couldn't deal with Lin Yuan. If Gongnan Tian joined the battle, Mo He wouldn't think that he could fight against two people at the same time, no matter how arrogant he was. Mo He had been careless, but in the end, he hadn't thought that Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace would intervene in the Great 1,000 Worlds affairs. In fact, from the moment he saw Lin Yuan, Nangongwan, and the others, he guessed that the righteous alliance of the Origin World had already known about the Great 1,000 World. Otherwise, how could Cloud Palace and Immortals Cloud Palace meddle in the world's world affairs? With Cloud Palaces is as, with Cloud, as Palace is Cloud Palace. Clouds is as fight, as Palaces with Palace with Cloud Palace, with S is with Cloud, at Tess, Cloud, Est was with Teat fight. Thinking of this, Mo He made the decision to retreat. While attacking, he transmitted his voice to Mo Chi and Hei Yang. Let's retreat. There was no other way. Now that things had come to this, they could only retreat temporarily. The vast 1,000 World would most likely have to be given to the alliance of the righteous sects. However, This did not matter too much. After all, potential was potential. If the vast thousand world wanted to develop, it would not be so simple. It should be known that the vast thousand world did not even have a single ancestor realm expert, let alone a world lord. The great thousand world didn't matter. However, this time, Emohi felt that he had lost all his face. The culprit of all this was obviously Lin Yuan. One day, I'll make that lunatic pay the price, Emohi thought inwardly. Emochi and Hei Yang naturally didn't have any objections after receiving Emohi's message. They also knew that it was impossible to continue fighting in the current situation. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the three of them to leave. Immediately, Emohi, Emochi, and Hei Yang took the initiative to retreat. Seeing this, Lin Yuan, Lin Hu, and Yu Luo instantly understood what they meant. Seeing Hei Yang take the initiative to retreat, Yu Luo didn't chase after him. After all, she wasn't the lunatics of the Cloud Palace. Since Hei Yang wanted to leave, she would let him go. After all, she couldn't keep him here. However, Lin Yuan and Lin Hu were different. When they saw that Emohi was about to retreat, the two of them immediately chased after him. Upon seeing this, the corners of Emohi's eyes widened. Indeed, look, the madmen from the Cloud Palace are here again, right? Everyone's strength is equal, and I've already taken the initiative to retreat. What's the point of you still not letting me go? You're talking as if you can kill me. Shouldn't a normal person be like you, Luo? If you want to run, then run. However, Lin Yuan and Lin, who obviously couldn't be measured by a normal person's way of thinking. In their eyes, they would only think that they were fighting fiercely. If you want to leave, then leave. Do you think you're taking a stroll in the garden? Therefore, Lin Yuan and Lin, who obviously didn't intend to let Emohi and Emochi off so easily. Seeing this, Emohi felt helpless. However, there was nothing he could do. When a scholar met a soldier, what should he do? Immediately, Emohi transmitted his voice to Hei Yang. Take the evil spirits and leave first. Emohi originally planned to personally take the evil spirits. However, now that Lin Yuan was unwilling to let them go, Emohi definitely couldn't leave. The evil spirits were quite talented. If he brought them back to the Devil Abyss and nurtured them, they would become rare geniuses. Therefore, he could only let Hei Yang take the evil spirits and leave first. Hearing Emohi's words, Hei Yang didn't refuse. In a flash, he arrived in front of the evil spirits. Without any explanation, he grabbed the evil spirits and left. He didn't have any intention of harming Xiao Chun. It wasn't that Hei Yang didn't want to kill Xiao Chun, but that Gong Nantian was eyeing him covetously. If he still didn't know what was good for him, then he wouldn't be able to leave. At the last moment, the evil spirits were rescued by Hei Yang. Emohi and Emochi also planned to flee separately. As for Lin Yuan and Lin Hu, they were like maggots that stuck to their bones, pestering them. Originally, Emohi didn't want to continue fighting. Now that he was entangled by Lin Yuan and Lin Hu, he angrily shouted, Lin Yuan, are you done being crazy? This time, I admit defeat. Do you really want to fight to the death? Nonsense. So you're saying that you can fight and leave as you wish. Did you ask for my opinion? I'm in the mood right now, and you want to leave now? Do you think you can think of all the good things? As he spoke, Lin Yuan suddenly punched out. Seeing this, Emohi was furious. You're crazy. He didn't want to tangle with Lin Yuan at all. He only wanted to escape. However, Lin Yuan had no intention of letting Emohi go so easily. He kept chasing after him. This scene made Emohi feel as if he had returned to the time when Lin Yuan had chased him for hundreds of thousands of miles. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 2493. Lin Yuan stuck to Emohi like a dogskin plaster, not giving Emohi the slightest chance to escape. On the other hand, Hei Yang managed to escape with the evil spirits rather smoothly. The main reason was that Yu Luo wasn't like Lin Yuan, who chased after Emohi relentlessly. Lin Yuan stuck to Emohi like a dogskin plaster, not giving Emohi the slightest chance to escape. On the other hand, Hei Yang managed to escape with the evil spirits rather smoothly. The main reason was that Yu Luo wasn't like Lin Yuan, who chased after Mo he relentlessly. The two of them fought as they fled. Mo he wanted to leave, but Lin Yuan didn't give him the slightest chance. Mo he was puzzled. They had already fought to this extent. Why didn't Lin Yuan let go? Both of them were ancestor experts. They were people with status and reputation. He had already admitted defeat and retreated, but Lin Yuan still didn't give up. Could it be that Lin Yuan really wanted to perish together with him? Mo he was puzzled, but he didn't have the slightest intention to continue fighting. What a joke. How could Mo he continue fighting with Lin Yuan in the current situation? It was as if he had returned to the time when Lin Yuan chased him for hundreds of thousands of miles. This time, Mo he wanted to leave, but Lin Yuan chased after him relentlessly. He couldn't shake Lin Yuan off. Mo he shouted angrily, "Lin Yuan, you lunatic! What do you want?" "Nothing much. I just want to kill you." Lin Yuan sneered when he heard that. Hearing Lin Yuan's reply, the anger in Mo he's heart burned even brighter. Did he think he was a pushover? Did he think he could kill him just because he wanted to? "Lin Yuan, you are indeed very strong. You are worthy of being the #1 expert among the 9 palace masters of the 9 palaces. However, I am not a pushover. In the Demon Abyss, I am also the #2 expert. My status is the same as Lin Yuan's. In terms of strength, status, and identity, the two of them didn't have much of a difference. However, in Lin Yuan's words, Mo he was like an ant that could be casually squashed to death. When had he ever been looked down upon like this? When had he ever been humiliated like this? The anger in Mo's heart continued to rise. For a moment, Mo even wanted to turn around and fight Lin Yuan. He wanted to see who would win in the end. However, in the face of such an impulse, Mo he forced himself to restrain himself. He had no other choice. Now was not the time to continue entangling with Lin Yuan. Gong Nantian and Moonfall were still around. If he stayed behind, wouldn't he be forcing Gong Nantian to take action? Gong Nantian had never thought of chasing after a Mo he. After all, if Mo he wanted to leave, even if Gong Nantian, Yu Luo, and Lin Yuan worked together, they might not necessarily be able to kill him. At most, they would only be able to make him pay a small price. However, if Mo he chose to stay and fight with Lin Yuan, things would be different. At that time, Gong Nantian would most likely choose to attack without any hesitation. After all, since Mo he was courting death, there was no reason for him not to fulfill his wish. Mo he was well aware of this. It was precisely because of this that he suppressed the anger in his heart in the face of Lin Yuan's repeated insults. He didn't have the slightest intention of fighting with Lin Yuan. Due to Lin Yuan's insults, Mo he's heart was burning with anger. Lin Yuan also seized this opportunity to throw a punch at Mo he while sneering. It's not a good habit to be distracted during a battle. Just now, Mo he had indeed been distracted for a moment. Lin Yuan also seized this opportunity to throw a punch at Mo he. Faced with Lin Yuan's punch, Mo he had no choice but to turn around and resist. "Lin Yuan, don't go too far." Mo he shouted angrily and threw out a palm strike. Dense demonic aura constantly gathered on his palm. When the fist and palm collided, the space around the two instantly collapsed. Terrifying void storms constantly emerged. With Lin Yuan and Mo he's cultivation, these void storms naturally posed no threat to them. The two of them simply ignored these void storms. Mo he also took this opportunity to rush into the void, intending to use this opportunity to escape. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan also quickly chased after him. The two of them rushed into the void one after another. In the endless void, Mo he didn't expect that Lin Yuan would still not let him off. Even though he had already entered the void, Lin Yuan still chased after him. This guy was definitely a dog skin plaster. Once he stuck to him, it would be difficult to get rid of him. At this moment, Mo he even wondered why he had come to the Great Thousand World to get involved in this mess. If he had known that he would meet a lunatic like Lin Yuan in the Great Thousand World, he probably wouldn't have come no matter what. This was simply too much of a bully. It was as if Mo he was an enemy who had killed his father. Mo, he was really speechless. This Lin Yuan was simply a lunatic. Mo, he crazily shuttled through the void while Lin Yuan chased after him. The difference in speed between the two of them wasn't big, so Mo, he had no way of getting rid of Lin Yuan. Seeing that this couldn't go on, Mo, he clenched his teeth. There was no other way. This was the only way. With Lin Yuan's unrelenting attitude, it was indeed very difficult to get rid of him without paying a price. Mo, he clenched his teeth when he thought of this. Demonic chi crazily surged around his body. With the appearance of this demonic chi, an avatar that looked exactly like Mo, he appeared beside him. Demon image clone. Lin Yuan muttered softly when he saw the clone beside Mo. Lin Yuan was naturally no stranger to the demon image clone. It could be said that it was a method that many demon cultivators cultivated. A demon seed would be planted in one's body, and after nourishing it, it would eventually form a demon image clone. During battle, one could summon the demon image clone to help them fight. It could be said that this method wasn't rare among demon cultivators. However, if one wanted to form a demon image clone, they would need to be at least an Emperor Realm Master. Moreover, it would take a long time to form a demon image clone. The demon image clone had about 80% of the main body's combat power. Mo, he had summoned it at this time because he was forced to the point of no return by Lin Yuan. Using the demon image clone to delay Lin Yuan and buy time for himself to escape was indeed the best method. However, the price he had to pay was that the demon image clone would probably die here. The price of a demon image clone was a headache for Mo. After all, it would take him a lot of time to nurture a complete demon image clone. Moreover, even if Mo, his current strength was monstrous and could be said to be the strongest existence below a world master, after so many years, he had only managed to nurture 4 demon image clones. Now that he had lost one, it was like cutting a piece of flesh from his heart. Mo, he felt a pain in his heart. However, after the demon avatar was formed, he clenched his teeth and ordered the demon avatar to attack Lin Yuan. As for himself, he disappeared from the spot in a flash without even turning his head as he roared furiously. Lin Yuan, this king will remember today's matter. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2494. In order to get rid of Lin Yuan, Mo did not hesitate to give up a demon avatar. Although this price was not so serious that Mo could not accept it, it was still enough to make him feel pain for a while. In order to get rid of Lin Yuan, Mo did not hesitate to give up a demon avatar. Although this price was not so serious that Mo could not accept it, it was still enough to make him feel pain for a while. Moreover, Mo had not obtained anything in the Great Thousand World this time. Instead, he had given up a demon avatar for nothing. This was even harder for him to accept. After Mo left, Lin Yuan was held back by the demon avatar. However, the demon avatar that only had 80% of the original's battle strength could not hold Lin Yuan back for long. Of course, to Mo, he only needed a little time to escape. By the time Lin Yuan defeated the demon avatar, Mo would have already escaped. While Lin Yuan was forcing Mo to burn with rage in the outside world, in the sky above the evil god palace, Xiao Qin's group had successfully killed their way into the evil god palace after Mo, Mo Qi, and He Yang had retreated. There were still some evil path cultivators guarding the evil god palace. However, with the death of Xie Tian and the other evil sovereigns and the rescue of the evil spirits by He Yang, the evil god palace had reached the end of its road. With just these ordinary evil path cultivators, it was impossible to stop Xiao Qin's group. Gong Nantian and Yu Luo did not make any more moves. At this time, the situation had been settled. The evil path cultivators in the evil god palace could not make any waves. Xiao Qin's group killed their way into the evil god palace and quickly took control of the situation. They killed all the evil path cultivators who were guarding the palace. When Gong Nantian and Yu Luo arrived at the main hall of the evil god palace, the entire evil god palace was already under the control of Xiao Qin's group. The battle between good and evil in the Great Thousand World had finally come to an end. This made Xiao Qin inwardly heave a sigh of relief. After such a long battle between good and evil, there was finally an end. The great thousand world would no longer be ravaged by the flames of war. Xiaochen planned to guard the evil god palace. However, the battle outside was not over yet. Junwia and the others were probably still fighting the evil path cultivators. Xiaochun, Xinyuan Ling, and Long Qing to support Jun and. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing immediately left with their men and headed straight for Leaping Tiger City. They were prepared to completely end this unprecedented war. After Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing left, Xiao Chun took the initiative to cup his hands and thank Gong Nantian and Yuluo. Thank you, seniors. This time, Gong Nantian, Lin Yuan, and the others played a huge role in defeating the evil path so smoothly. It was especially so for Lin Yuan and Lin Hu. If it weren't for them, Xiao Chen wouldn't have been able to end the battle so quickly. However, in the face of Xiao Chen's gratitude, Gong Nantian waved his hand nonchalantly and said, "It's fine. It's just a small matter. Besides, there seems to be a fish that escaped the net in the evil god palace." As he said that, Gong Nantian reached out and grabbed at the air. Immediately, a spatial crack appeared in the sky. Afterwards, a white-robed, middle-aged man was dragged out of the spatial crack uncontrollably and heavily fell to the ground. A fish that escaped the net. Upon seeing this man in white, Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes. This man was none other than the former old ancestor of Heavenly Sect, Tao Ming. Back then, when Xiao Chun killed Yang Chun, Tao Ming didn't show up. Even during the battle, just now, Tao Ming was nowhere to be seen. Xiao Chun didn't expect him to be hiding in the evil god palace. Now that the evil god palace was about to be destroyed, Tao Ming wanted to escape secretly. Unfortunately, it was impossible for Tao Ming to escape undetected in front of Gong Nantian and Yu Luo, who were both progenitor realm experts. There was no way he could hide from them. After being forced to reveal himself by Gong Nantian, Xiao Chun took a step forward and arrived in front of Tao Ming in an instant. He looked down at Tao Ming and said, "Senior Tao Ming, I didn't expect that we would meet again." Xiao Chun was no stranger to Tao Ming. In the past, when he faced Tao Ming, Xiao Chun didn't have the ability to fight him at all. But now, Xiao Chun was an Emperor Realm, Minor Perfection Realm Master, and was no longer afraid of Tao Ming. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Tao Ming struggled to stand up and looked at Xiao Chun with a complicated expression. Now that things had come to this, the winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. Tao Ming had nothing to say. This battle was a crushing defeat. Almost all the masters of the evil god palace were killed. As a result, the evil path no longer had the ability to continue fighting against the Great Thousand World. As an emperor of the Great Thousand World, Tao Ming naturally knew what his fate would be if he betrayed the Great Thousand World. For a traitor, the many emperors of the Great Thousand World wouldn't let him go. Tao Ming felt bitter in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Looking at Xiao Chun, Tao Ming was silent for a moment before he said indifferently, "The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. If you want to kill me, then kill me." This king has nothing to say. Tao Ming didn't ask for Xiao Chen's forgiveness because he knew that it was impossible. Just the fact that he had sided with the corrupt path was something that no one would forgive him for. Tao Ming knew that he was going to die. But as soon as Tao Ming's voice fell, Tao Ming suddenly threw a palm at Xiao Chun without any warning. He directly launched a sneak attack. However, Xiao Chun seemed to have guessed this and was prepared. When Tao Ming attacked, Xiao Chun also threw out a punch. The fist collided with the palm and perfectly blocked Tao Ming's sneak attack. "Oh, a dog can't change its habit. I guess that you would do this." After successfully blocking Tao Ming's sneak attack, Xiao Chun sneered. Seeing that Xiao Chun was prepared and that his sneak attack failed, Tao Ming was stunned for a moment before he attacked again. Anyway, he was going to die anyway, so he didn't care about this at this time. In the face of Tao Ming's attack, Xiao Chun was naturally not afraid. With a thought, the dustless sword appeared in his hand. Holding the dustless sword, Xiao Chun casually swung it. Tao Ming raised his eyebrows in the face of Xiao Chen's sword and suddenly became nervous. Strong, terrifyingly strong. Xiao Qian's sword made Tao Ming's hair stand on end. It seemed ordinary, but he couldn't find the slightest way to break it. He wanted to dodge, but there was no way to do so. He could only choose to take it head-on. In response, Tao Ming also threw out several palm strikes in a row before he finally managed to block Xiao Qian's sword. Although he successfully blocked it, the difference in strength between the two was obvious. Looking at Xiao Qian, Tao Ming couldn't believe that Xiao Qian was so strong. Xiao Qian was just a junior, but Xiao Qian's strength at this time shocked Tao Ming. Moreover, both of them were Emperor Realm masters, and Xiao Qian's cultivation was lower than his, but the sword just now made Tao Ming's scalp tingle. In order to block this sword, Tao Ming had to throw out 4 palm strikes in a row before he successfully blocked it. It was obvious how obvious the difference in strength between the two was. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 2495. It was just a single sword strike, but the strength that Xiao Qian had displayed had already allowed Tao Ming to clearly experience the gap in strength between the two of them. For Tao Ming, such an outcome was obviously unacceptable. It was just a single sword strike, but the strength that Xiao Qian had displayed had already allowed Tao Ming to clearly experience the gap in strength between the two of them. For Tao Ming, such an outcome was obviously unacceptable. Not long ago, Xiao Qian was just a junior in his eyes, while he was in existence on the same level as Xiao Qian's master, Jun Wuya. However, it had only been a short while, and Xiao Qian's battle strength had already caught up with his and even firmly suppressed him. This indeed made Tao Ming feel bitter. However, since things had already come to this, Tao Ming also knew that he would die no matter what, so he no longer cared about anything else and continued to attack Xiao Qian. The evil god palace had been defeated, and Tao Ming's fate was already sealed. However, as Tao Ming attacked again, before Xiao Qian could make a move, Mu Jun had already arrived. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he shouted at Tao Ming, "You're courting death." With Mu Jun's admiration for Xiao Qian, it was naturally impossible for him to watch Tao Ming attack Xiao Qian. Mu Jun's eyes were overflowing with killing intent as he directly attacked. However, at the same time, Xiao Qian opened his mouth and said, "Spare his life." Sparing Tao Ming's life was not to let him go, but because Xiao Qian wanted to hand him over to Jun Wuya and the others to deal with. After all, Tao Ming was once one of the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World, but he eventually betrayed the Great Thousand World. Such a person should be handed over to the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World to deal with. Hearing Xiao Qian's words, Mu Jun did not refuse. In other words, as long as it was Xiao Qian's request, Mu Jun had no reason to refuse. Under the joint forces of Xiao Qian and Mu Jun, Tao Ming naturally could not make any waves. He was quickly captured by the two, and his cultivation was sealed. After Xiao Qian had captured Tao Ming alive and sealed his cultivation, he threw him aside and ignored him. Mu Jun, on the other hand, looked at Xiao Qian with a smile on his face and said, "Xiao Qian, darling, you and I, stop. Xiao Qian didn't wait for Mu Jun to finish speaking when he heard the word treasure. The situation in the evil god palace had stabilized. On the other side, Lin Yuan and Lin, who had also returned to the evil god palace. Although the two of them failed to kill Mo and Mo Qi, it was within reason. After all, Mo and Mo Qi weren't ordinary characters. After paying a heavy price, if they wanted to escape, Lin Yuan and Lin who couldn't do anything about it. The battle on the evil god palace's side had come to an end. All the experts of the evil god palace were killed, leaving only Tao Ming alive. On the other side, on the battlefield where Jun Wuya and the others were fighting, although there were quite a number of evil cultivators, they couldn't withstand the encirclement of the people from the Great Thousand World. In addition, without the evil sovereigns, Jun Wuya and the other sovereigns were like gods descending to earth. No one could stop them. No one knew how many evil cultivators they had killed. With a single palm strike, Dao Xiong annihilated a large number of evil cultivators. Then, he turned to Jun Wuya and said, "Strange, where are the evil sovereigns? Why didn't any of them appear?" The evil sovereigns of the evil god palace seemed to have disappeared. Regarding this, the people from the Great Thousand World were naturally happy to see. Without the evil sovereigns, Jun Wuya and the other sovereigns had a much easier time. Similarly, after killing many evil cultivators with a single move, Jun Wuya replied indifferently. There should be a battle on the side of the evil god palace. It should be Chen Er's doing. The evil sovereigns didn't show up at all. In Jun Wuya's view, there was only one explanation, and that was that the evil sovereigns were also fighting in the evil god palace. There was no way the evil sovereigns could rush over. Hearing Jun Wuya's words, Dao Xiong also felt that it made sense. However, he was still secretly shocked. One had to know, could Xiao Chun and the others hold back the evil sovereigns of the evil god palace? If it was possible, then how strong was Xiao Chun's cultivation now? After not seeing each other for a few months, Dao Xiong was full of curiosity about Xiao Chun. However, if he knew that the evil sovereigns of the evil god palace were not only held back by Xiao Chun, but had all been killed, he wondered how Dao Xiong would feel. The evil sovereigns, who were once on par with the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World, had all been killed by Xiao Chun. Such a matter was probably enough to shock Dao Xiong. While the two of them were talking, Xin Yuanling and Long Qing finally arrived from the direction of the evil god palace with more than a dozen experts from the Great Thousand World. Seeing that the battle was coming to an end, Xin Yuanling and Long Qing came directly to Jun Wuya and called out with a smile, "Old ancestor." Seeing that Xin Yuanling and Long Qing had arrived, Jun Wuya smiled and asked, "Only the two of you? Where's Chun?" Jun Wuya was obviously very concerned about Xiao Chun. In this regard, Xin Yuanling also told Jun Wuya the truth about the situation in the evil god palace. When Jun Wuya heard that the battle at the evil god palace had ended and all the evil sovereigns were killed by Xiao Chen's group, he couldn't help but stare blankly at Xiao Chen's group, killing the evil god palace's evil sovereigns so easily. Of course, Xiao Chun and the others were not the only ones who could determine the outcome of the battle so quickly. Then, Xin Yuanling and Long Qing also told Jun Wuya about the matters of Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace. Hearing that it was mainly because of the experts from these two forces that the battle in the evil god palace could be resolved so quickly, a complicated look flashed in Jun Wuya's eyes. Judging from the current situation, the battle between the good and evil had clearly come to an end. Although there were still a few evil warriors who fought to the death, it was no longer a big deal and could not change anything. However, the fact that the battle between the good and evil could end so quickly was inseparable from the experts from Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace. Moreover, the people from these two forces were simply invincible compared to the warriors in the Great Thousand World. Therefore, even though the battle between the good and evil in the Great Thousand World had ended with their help, what happened next was still enough to give people a headache. This was because no one knew if the people from these two forces would make any requests. Once they made a request, could the Great Thousand World reject them? In other words, because of the intervention of these two forces, the situation in the Great Thousand World would be completely changed in the future. After all, the Great Thousand World did not have the strength to contend with them. Since they did not have the strength to contend with them, they naturally did not have the qualifications to negotiate. Therefore, when the time came, the Great Thousand World would be at the mercy of others. When he thought of the two giants, Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace, Jun Wuya did not feel too happy about the victory. Instead, he was thinking about what to do next. When faced with these two giants, how should the Great Thousand World deal with them, and how to deal with them? Thinking of this, Jun Wuya's gaze unconsciously looked at Tenzu, who was beside him. At this time, Tenzu's expression also became serious. Chapter 2496. The battle between good and evil that had troubled the Great Thousand World for several years had finally come to an end. After this battle, the evil god palace could be said to have been completely destroyed, and there was no longer any hope left. The battle between good and evil that had troubled the Great Thousand World for several years had finally come to an end. After this battle, the evil god palace could be said to have been completely destroyed, and there was no longer any hope left. However, although the battle between good and evil had come to an end, and the Great Thousand World had won, Junwia and the other sovereigns did not feel too happy. After the evil warriors had been killed, and those who had escaped were those with low cultivation, Junwia and the other sovereigns no longer attacked, including Dao Ju, Xiao Xiao, and the other young geniuses. Although the battle between good and evil had come to an end, the Great Thousand World had also ushered in a new challenge, and it was a challenge that was more difficult than the evil warriors. The thousands of universes in the outside world, especially the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace, were like two huge mountains that were pressing down on the Great Thousand World. Previously, the Great Thousand World had no connection with the thousands of universes in the outside world, and at the same time, it did not attract anyone's attention. However, it was different now. The Great Thousand World had walked into the eyes of the thousands of universes, but the most fatal thing was that the Great Thousand World did not seem to have the power to protect itself when facing these powerful universes. Without the power to protect itself, it meant that when facing these powerful universes, the Great Thousand World was like a fish on a chopping board and could only be slaughtered. This was absolutely a terrifying thing, because without the power to resist, it meant that in the future, the Great Thousand World would have to listen to the orders of the other universes, and the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World would no longer have any autonomy. What worried Junwuya and the others the most was undoubtedly the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace. After all, the experts of these two behemoths were now in the Great Thousand World, and the Great Thousand World did not know what they wanted, and it seemed that there was no way to refuse. Although Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace had done the Great Thousand World a great favor this time, and if they had not acted, the outcome might have been completely different. Even so, Junwuya and the others could not help but feel heavy-hearted at the thought of this. Everyone stood proudly in the sky and gathered together. It could be seen that Junwuya and the other sovereigns didn't look too good. At the same time, they asked Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing a lot about the two great powers, Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace. Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing both answered truthfully. After a series of inquiries, Junwuya took the lead and said, "Let's go. No matter what, he has helped us a lot, and now we can't avoid it." According to the thoughts of Junwuya and the others, they indeed did not want to have too much to do with the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace, but now it was definitely impossible. They had helped them, and now they were waiting in the Evil God Palace. If they did not take the initiative to pay them a visit, it would obviously be unreasonable. Hearing Junwuya's words, Dao Xiong and the other sovereigns also nodded helplessly. This was indeed the case, and there was no way to avoid it. They could only choose to face it head-on. First, they would see what the experts of Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace wanted. Perhaps they were thinking too much. However, this possibility was too small. There was no free lunch in the world. Junwuya and the others were all experienced people, and they naturally understood this simple principle very well. Without a goal, or perhaps without a request, there is no way Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace would take action, right? Helping the Great Thousand Worlds for free, yet not getting anything in return, this was clearly impossible. At the very least, the chances of this happening were too small, almost non-existent. Some people were left to clean up the remaining remnants of the Evil God Palace. Then, the sovereigns, as well as Dao Ju and the other Heaven's Prides, accompanied by Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing, rushed to the Evil God Palace. Xiao Chun and the others temporarily stayed in the Evil God Palace. At night, Xiao Chun, Gu Lingyao, and the other two women sat in the courtyard and chatted. Xiao Chun had actually thought of the problem that Junwuya was worried about. But compared to Junwuya's worries, Xiao Chun seemed more confident. After all, no matter what, Xiao Chun understood Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace better than anyone else, especially Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian. Although Xiao Chun did not deny that Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace definitely had some requests, Xiao Chun was sure that these two great forces did not have much desire for the Great Thousand World. Although this might be a little hurtful, to be honest, the Great Thousand World was indeed not in the eyes of Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace. Xiao Chun had never been to the Great Thousand World, but he had been to the primordial world. Compared to the primordial world, the Great Thousand World was like a remote village, and even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was many times worse. Therefore, Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace naturally did not care about the Great Thousand World. Moreover, although the Great Thousand World had unlimited potential, it was only compared to some universes that were already incomplete. Compared to the primordial world and the Great Thousand World, the Great Thousand World did not have any outstanding aspects. One must know that the Great Thousand World also had perfect world principles, which were no different from the Great Thousand World. In fact, they were even better. Therefore, after understanding this, Xiao Chen was naturally much calmer than Jun Wuya and the others. Moreover, and most importantly, Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian. Xiao Chen did not know how to describe the feeling these two gave him. In any case, Xiao Chen was willing to believe in them. The night passed, and early the next morning, Xiao Chen waited in front of the evil god palace's main hall. Not long after, Jun Wuya and the others also arrived. Seeing Xiao Chen, Jun Wuya's face immediately showed a touch of joy. Xiao Chen was safe and sound, and even benefited from the disaster. His cultivation had already reached the minor emperor realm. This naturally made Jun Wuya very happy. With Jun Wuya's eyesight, he naturally saw through Xiao Chen's cultivation at a glance. However, Dao Ju and the others could not see through it. However, their intuition told them that the current Xiao Chen had completely widened the gap between them and him. Taking the initiative to greet him, Xiao Chen smiled and called out to Jun Wuya, "Master." "Haha, it's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." Hearing Xiao Chen's voice, Jun Wuya said with a smile. At the same time, Dao Ju, Xiao Xiao, Li Chun, and the others also took the initiative to surround Xiao Chen. Dao Ju looked at Xiao Chen and said with a bitter smile, "Tell me honestly, brother Xiao Chen, what's your cultivation now?" "Minor Emperor Realm." Hearing this, Xiao Chen said with a smile. Hearing that Xiao Chen was already an Emperor Realm master, Dao Ju was stunned for a moment, then shook his head repeatedly. "Sai, forget it, I admit defeat. Compared to a freak like you, it's simply too demoralizing. In the future, I'll have more contact with Li Chun, Xiao Xiao, and the others." After learning about Xiao Chen's cultivation, Dao Ju was completely desperate. Not only did the gap between them not close, on the contrary, Xiao Chen left them further and further behind. How could he continue to play? He couldn't compare at all. Indeed, comparisons were odious. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2497. Hearing Dao Ju's words, everyone smiled helplessly, especially Li Chun, Xiao Xiao, Yin Tianyi, and the other young geniuses. It was the first time they felt despair. Step by step, they could only watch as Xiao Chen widen the gap between them and Xiao Chen. Now, there was no way they could compare with him. Xiao Chen had already reached the minor emperor realm. Looking at everyone's bitter smiles, Xiao Chen said with a smile, "Well, let's get down to business. The seniors of Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace are already waiting." Hearing Xiao Chen mention the Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace's experts, everyone's face darkened, and their eyes became more serious. Now that the evil god palace had been destroyed, they were most worried about the Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace. After all, the Great Thousand World had no ability to resist these two behemoths, and the Great Thousand World had no idea what they wanted. This inevitably made everyone worried. Seeing the change in everyone's expression, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Don't worry, it shouldn't be a big problem." Xiao Chen knew more about Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace than anyone else, so he was naturally more relaxed. Hearing this, everyone just nodded slightly, but judging from their expressions, they obviously didn't take Xiao Chen's words seriously. Under Xiao Chen's lead, the group quickly arrived at the entrance of the evil god palace's main hall, but Mu Jun and Lin Feng stopped Dao Ju and the other young geniuses here. According to Lin Yuan, Gongnan Tian, and the other young geniuses were not qualified to enter the main hall to discuss matters. Only Xiao Chen, Jun Wuya, and the other Dizun masters were allowed to enter. After being stopped by Lin Feng and Mu Jun, Lin Feng looked at Xiao Chun with a wry smile and said, "Brother Xiao Chun, this is Uncle Yuan's idea. I can't do anything about it." He specifically explained to Xiao Chun, afraid that Xiao Chun would misunderstand. Mu Jun smiled and said to Xiao Chun, "Don't worry, I will take good care of them." As he spoke, he winked at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun ignored him. Mu Jun had been giving Xiao Chun a headache recently. They were not qualified to enter, but Dao Ju and the others were not angry. They were not stupid and knew the current situation. They also knew that the situation in the Great Thousand World was completely different now. The previous method was no longer feasible. Everyone gladly accepted the fact that they were rejected. Xiao Chun also asked Dao Ju and the others to go to his residence and wait for him with Hongxiu and the others. Everyone gladly accepted this. After making arrangements for Dao Ju and the others, Xiao Chun led Jun Wuya, Dao Xiong, and the other sovereigns into the main hall of the Evil God Palace. As soon as they entered the main hall, they saw Lin Yuan, Gongnan Tian, Lin Hu, and Yu Luo sitting on the main seats. When they saw the four people, Jun Wuya and the others narrowed their eyes. The four people did not reveal any aura, but what shocked Jun Wuya and the others the most was that they could not see through the cultivation level of Lin Yuan and the others. There is only one explanation for the fact that he couldn't even see through their cultivation. The gap between the two parties was simply too great. That was why he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation. This discovery made the hearts of Jun Wuya and the others even heavier. Compared to the shock and fear of Jun Wuya and the others, Lin Yuan and the others were very casual. Gongnan Tian even smiled at Xiao Chun and said, "Xiao Chun, little brat, arrange for them to be seated. It's not a big deal, just a few words will do." They originally thought that it would be a very formal negotiation, but looking at Gongnan Tian's appearance, it did not seem like that was the case. He did not treat this meeting as a negotiation at all. Xiao Chun was already prepared for this and arranged for Jun Wuya and the others to be seated. In fact, Xiao Chun had already guessed that Lin Yuan, Gongnan Tian, and the others did not want to negotiate with the Great Thousand World. To put it bluntly, they looked down on the Great Thousand World. What was a negotiation? The premise of a negotiation was that both sides were equal in strength. Even if there was a gap, it could not be too big. The Great Thousand World, whether compared to the primordial world or the macro world, had a huge gap. The two sides were not on the same level at all, so it was naturally impossible for them to negotiate. To put it bluntly, the Great Thousand World did not have the qualifications to negotiate with the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace. Today's meeting was just a formality for Lin Yuan, Gongnan Tian, and the others. After everyone was seated, Xiao Chun sat next to Jun Wuya. Gongnan Tian's gaze swept across everyone present, and with just a glance, he saw through all the sovereigns present. The strongest was naturally Jun Wuya, a half-step progenitor. The second strongest was the Heavenly Ancestor. Of course, the Heavenly Ancestor wasn't chosen because of his strength, but because of his status. Therefore, Gongnan Tian had to pay more attention to him. Finally, his gaze fell on Jun Wuya, Tinzu, and Xiao Chun. As for the others, they were directly ignored by Gongnan Tian. With a faint smile on his face, Gongnan Tian said, "Xiao Chun has already told you about the Great Devil World and the Demon Abyss, right?" Xiao Chun had indeed briefly told Jun Wuya and the others about the experts from the Demon Abyss helping the Evil God Palace in the Great Demonic World. Everyone already knew that this time, the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace were not the only ones who had interfered in the battle between the good and evil in the vast thousand world. Experts from other forces had also taken action. If Lin Yuan and the other three had not arrived in time, the vast thousand world would have been destroyed. Hearing Gongnan Tian's words, Tinzu, as the representative of the Great Thousand World, also stood up and respectfully bowed to Gongnan Tian. "Indeed, I have to thank Senior for your help. The matter of the Great Devil World was a fact, and without Lin Yuan, Gongnan Tian, and the others, it was difficult to say what would have happened, so they naturally had to express their gratitude." In the face of Tinzu's gratitude, Gongnan Tian waved his hand indifferently and said, "It's okay, the matter of the Great Thousand World has indeed attracted the attention of many universes, but there are some things that I can't explain too much to you now. This time, I asked you to come here because there are some things that I have to discuss with you." Gongnan Tian's attitude was still relatively polite, but rather than a discussion, it was more like an order, because the Great Thousand World could not refuse. Hearing Gong Nan Tian's words, the sovereigns present all looked serious. They all knew that the real important thing was coming next, and it was the important thing that concerned the entire Great Thousand World. Everyone's gaze fell on Gong Nan Tian. Just as Gong Nan Tian was about to speak again, Lin Yuan spoke first. He glanced at Gong Nan Tian impatiently and said, "That's right. Can you cut the crap? I'll be frank. This time, there's some reasons why I helped the Great Thousand World this time, but from now on, the Great Thousand World must be ruled by Shao Chun and his sword sect. I hope that Shao Chun and the sword sect can become the rulers of the Great Thousand World. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 2498. Lin Yuan was obviously much more direct than Gong Nan Tian. He interrupted Gong Nan Tian and said bluntly. Jun Weia and the others were stunned when they heard this. Gong Nan Tian smiled helplessly. This boorish fellow. In fact, the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace's request was very simple. They wanted Shao Chun and the Sword Sect to be in charge of the vast Thousand World. Compared to the others, the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace were naturally more inclined toward Shao Chun. As for whether they needed the vast Thousand World to do anything in the future, this was not mentioned. After all, the vast Thousand World's current strength was not enough to help the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace. It could only be said that if the vast Thousand World could give birth to a World Lord in the future, then it would be fine. Of course, what the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace were most concerned about was that the vast Thousand World could not join the Dark Age camp. Therefore, letting Shao Chun be in charge of the vast Thousand World was Lin Yun and Mu Lingxin's idea. This was the only request of the Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace. It was very simple, but in fact it also affected the interests of some people, such as Dao Xiong, Yin Shun, Li Xiao, and the others present. It should be known that the vast Thousand World had always been ruled by the 10 Great Ling Tian sects. However, the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace directly intervened and wanted the Sword Sect to rule the entire vast Thousand World. To put it bluntly, they wanted to abandon the previous situation of the 10 Great Ling Tian sects and let the Sword Sect dominate the vast Thousand World. As for the other Ling Tian sects, they could only choose to submit to the Sword Sect in the future or be destroyed. Although Lin Yuan did not say this, they were not stupid and knew what the result would be. For a moment, Dao Xiong and the others, including Tenzu, looked at Jun Weia and Shao Chun with complicated expressions. Just a moment ago, perhaps they really were comrades who had fought side by side. However, now that the corrupt path had been destroyed, the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace's demands were a bit difficult to accept. After all, none of them were willing to submit to others. Moreover, for so many years, the Sword Sect had always been on equal footing with them. There was even a period of time when the Sword Sect had directly fallen out of the top 10 Ling Tian sects. However, now that they were suddenly told to respect the Sword Sect, it was normal for them to find it hard to accept. There was also Tenzu. He knew what Lin Yuan meant. In the future, even he would have to listen to the Sword Sect. This made Tenzu feel very uncomfortable. Shao Chun remained unperturbed under the gaze of the crowd. It was as if he had known all this from the beginning. Jun Weia smiled bitterly, but did not say anything. Lin Yuan's words could be said to have allowed the Sword Sect to soar into the sky. Of course, it also ruthlessly trampled on the other sections. Gong Nan Tian smiled and said, "This is the only request of the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace. Of course, it is also a request that cannot be refused. In fact, there is no need for everyone to be too nervous. After all, the situation in the Great Thousand World is different now. Even if the Cloud Palace rules the Great Thousand World, it will not have much effect on everyone here. You will just have to obey the orders of the Cloud Palace. In the future, the Great Thousand World will become more and more powerful, and it will need a sect to be the ruler. Gong Nantian smiled, as if he was enlightening everyone. However, no one had any intention of replying. At this moment, Lin Yuan stood up and snorted coldly. I have called everyone here today because of this matter. Now that I have made myself clear, everyone must obey. Also, Tenzu, what do you think? As he spoke, Lin Yuan looked at Tenzu. It was obvious that he was forcing Tenzu to express his opinion. Facing Lin Yuan's gaze, a look of helplessness flashed across Tenzu's eyes. After a moment of silence, he nodded bitterly and said, I have no objections. Tenzu chose to agree. This was something that could not be helped. Looking at Lin Yuan's attitude, if he dared to say no, Tenzu would probably disappear today. With Lin Yuan's strength, it would not be difficult for him to kill him. Even if he was a Tenzu, there was nothing he could do. After all, Tenzu of the vast thousand world could not be compared to the Tenzu of the Hongmeng world and the Great World. There was a huge gap between the two sides. The more powerful a world was, the stronger the heavenly ancestor would be. The Great Thousand World's current strength could not be compared to the Hongmeng world and the Great World. As such, there was naturally a gap in the strength of the heavenly ancestor. Seeing Tenzu nod in agreement, Lin Yuan's expression softened slightly. He then looked at Dao Xiong, Yin Shun, Li Xiao, and the others and asked indifferently, What about you? Regardless of whether they were sincere or not, Lin Yuan wanted to force them to express their opinion. No matter what they were thinking, Lin Yuan only wanted to know their attitude. Faced with Lin Yuan's question, everyone was silent for a moment. Then Luo Xing spoke first. I have no objections. From today onwards, the Moon Palace can be a subsidiary sect of the Sword Sect. Without a doubt, Luo Xing was the only one who did not have any objections. After all, Luo Xing had always been in love with Junwuya. It was not difficult for her to delay the Sword Sect and Xiao Chun. Furthermore, it was not a big deal for the Moon Palace to be a subsidiary sect of the Sword Sect. Luo Xing was the first to express her opinion. Then, although Dao Xiong, Yun Shun, and the others were unwilling, they still nodded in agreement on the surface. Seeing that everyone had expressed their opinions, Lin Yuan nodded. He then looked at Xiao Chun and said, Xiao Chun, kid, we will stay in the Sword Sect for a period of time. Make some preparations. We will leave for the Sword Sect tomorrow to take a look. Naturally, Lin Yuan was not foolish enough to believe what everyone had just said. Although Yin Shun and the others had expressed their agreement, it was all because of Lin Yuan's oppression. Once Lin Yuan and the others left, these people would probably turn on him immediately. Moreover, it would be difficult for the Sword Sect to truly control the Great Thousand World. Therefore, Lin Yuan and the others were not in a hurry to leave. At the very least, they had to wait until the Sword Sect had enough strength to truly control the Great Thousand World. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, Xiao Chun stood up and replied, Thank you, Senior. Xiao Chun knew very well that the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace were doing this. In the eyes of these two forces, the Sword Sect was just a chess piece in the Great Thousand World. He did not know what the two forces' motives were, but for the time being, the Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace did not seem to have any intentions of controlling the Great Thousand World. They were only doing this as a precaution. Because Xiao Chun did not know about the Origin World, he naturally did not know that Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian had arranged for the Sword Sect to control the Great Thousand World to prevent the Great Thousand World from joining the Dark Ages camp in the future. Even if the Great Thousand World was very weak now, there were still some things that had to be paid attention to. Therefore, Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian were much more relieved to let the Sword Sect control the Great Thousand World. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2499. No one had the right to object to the requests of the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace. With Dao Xiong and the others expressing their opinions, the matter was finally settled. No one had the right to object to the requests of the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace. With Dao Xiong and the others expressing their opinions, the matter was finally settled. Although no one was truly convinced, at least before Lin Yuan, Gong Nan Tian, and the others left, they would not dare to make the slightest move. As for what would happen after Lin Yuan and the others left, it would depend on Xiao Qin's own ability. Of course, in Lin Yuan's opinion, if Xiao Qin could not successfully control the Great Thousand World, it would prove that Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian had misjudged him. When the time came, they could just replace him. In any case, the Great Thousand World had to be controlled by the alliance of the righteous sects. At the very least, they could not let the people of the Dark Age succeed. The matter was settled. Then, Lin Yuan, Gong Nan Tian, and the others left, leaving the crowd to discuss other matters. As for tomorrow's trip to the Sword Sect, it had nothing to do with them. Without Lin Yuan and the others, everyone was secretly relieved. However, they all looked at Jun Wuya and Xiao Qin with complicated expressions. No one had thought that things would develop to this point. With the support of Lin Yuan and the others, Xiao Qin and the Sword Sect could be said to have reached the sky in a single step. However, no one had the slightest ability to resist. They were all speechless. Seeing this, Xiao Qin knew what everyone was thinking. He did not intend to explain too much, knowing that it was difficult for everyone to accept. At this time, it was useless for him to say anything more. Everything could only be slowly smoothed out by time. Of course, if one wanted to completely control the Great Thousand World, strength was indispensable. However, based on the current situation, the Sword Sect was indeed worthy of being called the #1 sect in the Great Thousand World. Just Jun Wuya alone was enough to intimidate the sovereigns. After all, the cultivation of the half-step ancestor realm was not just for show. He did not want to continue to be entangled in this matter. Let's talk about it later. Moreover, Xiao Qin had a general idea of the future, but now he had to deal with the matter at hand. Getting up, Xiao Qin looked at everyone present and said calmly, "Seniors, this junior has a person in his hands. His life and death needs to be decided by seniors." Following Xiao Qin's words, Li Ku and Yun Nantian brought Tao Ming into the hall. Seeing Tao Ming, everyone's expression changed slightly, especially Yun Chun. After all, he was Tao Ming's junior brother. They did not expect that Tao Ming would be captured alive by Xiao Qin. At first, everyone was shocked, but on second thought, Xiao Qin was now an Emperor Realm Small Perfection Emperor Realm Master. Like them, he was also an Emperor Realm Master. Moreover, with Xiao Qin's heaven-defying combat strength, among everyone present, except for Jun Wuya, no one dared to say that they could win against Xiao Qin. Realizing this, everyone felt even more bitter in their hearts. Yes, unknowingly, the Sword Sect had indeed become much stronger. Even Xiao Qin, as the sect master, was now on equal footing with these old guys. Looking at their juniors, let alone Emperor Realm Masters, all of them were still struggling in the End Realm. Compared to Xiao Qin, it was obvious that the difference was like heaven and earth. Perhaps even without the support of Lin Yuan and the others, the Sword Sect would dominate the Great Thousand World in the future. After all, the Sword Sect's strength had indeed far surpassed the other Ling Tian sects, a sect with 2 emperors. This was something that no other sect in the Great Thousand World could compare with. Realizing the current strength of the Sword Sect, everyone present had a bitter look on their faces. But soon, everyone turned their attention to Tao Ming. Naturally, everyone present was no stranger to Tao Ming. After all, they were all emperors of the Great Thousand World. When they met again, no one would have thought that it would be such a scene. Tao Ming had become a prisoner. Tao Ming had a complicated look on his face when he was faced with someone he used to know, even his close junior brother. Xiao Qin also spoke at this time. Junior captured Tao Ming alive to let seniors decide. This person has betrayed the Great Thousand World and should receive the punishment he deserves. In Xiao Qin's opinion, Tao Ming must die because his actions were worse than those evil sovereigns of the evil path. He was a traitor who had betrayed the Great Thousand World. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Dao Xiong and the others did not have any objections. Tao Ming did deserve to die, but Yin Chun, Tao Ming's junior brother, said with a gloomy face, "Xiao Chun boy, When will it be your turn? Yunshin originally wanted to ask when it was Xiao Qin's turn to express his opinion. In Yunshin's heart, Xiao Qin had always been a junior and was of the same generation as Yun Tianyi. He was not qualified to speak in front of the emperors. But halfway through his words, Yunshin seemed to have suddenly realized something, and his voice came to an abrupt halt. Yes, Xiao Qian was indeed a junior, but his cultivation was now at the minor emperor realm. He was fully qualified to be on equal footing with everyone present, so he naturally had the right to express his opinion. Subconsciously, Yunshin still thought that Xiao Qian was just a junior, but in fact, Xiao Qian was no longer the Xiao Qian of the past. The current Xiao Qian could stand at the top of the Great Thousand World even without relying on his master, Jun Wuya. Along with Yin Chen's silence, everyone sighed slightly. Strength was respected, and this was how the world worked. Seeing that Yin Chen had stopped speaking, Xiao Qian did not pay much attention to him and instead looked at the others. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, Jun Wuya was the first to speak up. Chen is right. Tao Ming should be executed. I agree, Tenzu echoed. I agree too, Luo Xing said. I have no objections, Dao Xiong said. Soon, everyone expressed their opinions and agreed with Xiao Qian. In the end, only Yun Chen remained silent. For a moment, everyone's gaze fell on Yun Chen. Facing everyone's gazes, Yun Chen looked at Tao Ming with a complicated expression. As fellow disciples, Yun Chen naturally wanted to save Tao Ming, but the reality made him realize that he couldn't save Tao Ming. Even if he was a venerable sovereign, he still couldn't save Tao Ming. Sighing softly, Yun Chen said bitterly, Senior brother, there are some things that cannot be changed. Since you have made your choice, you can only bear the consequences. Yun Chen's words were full of helplessness. Hearing this, Tao Ming smiled and said, Senior brother, I know. Junior brother, you don't have to be like this. Senior brother has long been prepared for such an outcome. Senior brother has chosen his own path, and senior brother does not regret it. Tao Ming also knew that Yun Chen was helpless in this matter. After all, no matter how strong Yun Chen was, it was impossible for him to openly oppose the decision of the emperors of the Great Thousand World. After all, Yun Chen was not Jun Wuya. If it was Jun Wuya, he might be able to turn the tide, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2500. Tao Ming also knew that there was no way out for him. Although Yin Chen really wanted to protect him, it was a pity that even Yin Chen was powerless to do so. It was impossible for him to fight against everyone present on his own. Hearing Tao Ming's words, Yin Chen closed his eyes helplessly, as if he couldn't bear to see the scene of Tao Ming's death. After all, the two of them were senior brothers. Seeing that even Yin Chen no longer objected, Jun Wuya directly made his move. With a point of his finger, a cyan light instantly enveloped Tao Ming. Then, countless cyan light rays pierced through Tao Ming's body. With Jun Wuya personally making a move and Tao Ming's cultivation being sealed, needless to say, he died on the spot. After killing Tao Ming with his own hands, Jun Wuya looked at everyone and said, Now, the battle between the good and evil has come to an end. However, there are still many remnants of the evil path's cultivators who have escaped. These people are a hidden danger to the Great Thousand World. I hope that everyone can be more careful and end this battle as soon as possible so that the Great Thousand World can truly return to peace. Hearing Jun Wuya's words, no one objected. The battle between the good and evil had ended, but the Great Thousand World had yet to truly return to peace. Some finishing work still needed to be carried out, the most important of which was naturally the encirclement and suppression of the remnants of the evil path's cultivators. As for the damage caused by this battle, it could only be slowly healed by time. After this battle ended, the Great Thousand World's overall strength had indeed suffered a great loss. After that, everyone discussed how to wrap things up, and Jun Wuya undoubtedly became the leader of the group. Since they couldn't refuse the request of Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace, the Sword Sect was destined to become the ruler of the Great Thousand World. Therefore, Junwia had no choice but to stand out and command everyone. Moreover, Junwia taking the initiative to stand out was obviously better than Xiao Chun. After all, although Xiao Chun was an Emperor Realm Master, it would be difficult for all the emperors present to listen to Xiao Chen's orders. However, if it was Junwia, it would be much better. After all, even if Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace were not mentioned, Junwia was still the #1 master in the Great Thousand World. With his half-step ancestor realm cultivation, the emperors wouldn't have much resistance if they listened to Junwia's orders. After confirming the final preparations, everyone left one after another. The sky was already dark, and everyone planned to stay the night in the Evil God Palace. At the same time, they wanted to see if there were any other secrets hidden in the Evil God Palace. At night, Junwia and Xiao Chun didn't go out. The master and disciple walked in the pavilion in the courtyard. Junwia was naturally very curious about the outside world and asked Xiao Chun a lot about the Hongmeng world. In the face of Junwia's inquiry, Xiao Chun naturally didn't hide anything and told Junwia everything he knew. After hearing Xiao Chun talk about the huge gap between the Great Thousand World and the Hongmeng world, as well as the World Masters and so on, Junwia sighed and said, "In that case, our Great Thousand World really hasn't had a World Master." From Xiao Chun's words, Junwia knew that the Great Thousand World had never had a World Master, and a World Master was the guardian of a universe. Although Xiao Chun knew very little about the World Masters, he could guess that perhaps it was because there was no World Master that the Great Thousand World didn't dare to have any contact with other universes. After seeing the power of Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian, Xiao Chun could be sure that any one of them could destroy the entire Great Thousand World, and the Great Thousand World wouldn't have any power to resist. He didn't know when the Great Thousand World would have a World Master, but Xiao Chun had a trace of ambition in his heart. He wanted to become the World Master of the Great Thousand World. After seeing the power and vastness of the outside world, Xiao Chun naturally wanted to become an expert like Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian. He wanted to be an overlord and dominate a universe. While the master and disciple were talking about the outside world, in another basic place of the Evil God Palace, Dao Xiong and the others were also telling Dao Ju and the others about what had happened today. In the same ordinary courtyard, Dao Xiong and Dao Ju sat opposite each other. They had already heard about what had happened in the main hall from their father. In the end, Dao Xiong said helplessly, "Ju, from today onwards, I'm afraid the Great Thousand World will change completely. The rise of the Sword Sect is unstoppable." As for Dao Xiong, he was also unwilling to submit to the Sword Sect, but what could he do? Just as he said, the rise of the Sword Sect was unstoppable and no one could stop it. However, he originally thought that his son would be furious after hearing about this. But who knew? Dao Ju was not surprised at all and said with a smile, "Father, I've already guessed it. When I learned that Xiao Chun had broken through to the Emperor realm today, I thought this would be the result. After all, a sword sect with 2 emperors, even without the masters from Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace, the rise of the sword sect was inevitable. Once the sword sect has absolute strength, how could it allow other Ling Tian sects to exist? After all, a mountain can't have 2 tigers." Dao Ju seemed to have seen through everything clearly this time. Seeing this, Dao Xiong was a little surprised and asked curiously, "Then what do you think?" "What else can I think? I'll submit to the sword sect." Although saying this might be a little unfair to the ancestor, I feel that my future achievements in the sword sect may be even higher. Facing Dao Ju's answer, Dao Xiong was speechless for a long time. He never thought that Dao Ju would give such an answer. Faced with the reality of the rise of the sword sect, Dao Ju chose to accept it. On the other side, in the Moon Palace's residence, Xiao Xiao and Luo Xing made the same choice. However, some people supported and some people accepted, so naturally, there were people who opposed and opposed it. Among them, the one who opposed it the most was undoubtedly Mu Tian Mountain. Yin Shun and Yun Tianyi were also sitting together. Unlike Dao Ju's acceptance, Yin Tianyi's face was already extremely gloomy as he said coldly to his father, "Father, are we going to do this?" Yin Shun was unwilling to submit to the sword sect and was even more unable to accept this fact. Although Xiao Chun was now an Emperor Realm Master, Yin Tianyi still didn't think that he was worse than Xiao Chun. In his opinion, Xiao Chun was just luckier than him. Facing Yin Tianyi's unwillingness, Yin Shun only said indifferently, "The current sword sect is not something that I, Mu Tian Mountain, can provoke. A sect with 2 Emperor Realm Masters, who in the Great Thousand World can go against them." "Father, you're wrong. We can't do it alone, but what if we add other forces?" Yin Tianyi said coldly. Chapter 25:01. Yin Tianyi couldn't accept the fact that he had submitted to the sword sect. Hearing his words, Yin Shun fell into silence. Yin Tianyi couldn't accept the fact that he had submitted to the sword sect. Hearing his words, Yin Shun fell into silence. Looking at the current situation, the sword sect was already established. In the entire Great Thousand World, there wasn't a single force that could contend against it. However, Yin Tianyi actually wanted to ally with other forces to resist the sword sect. Yin Shun didn't reply to Yin Tianyi's words. After all, this was a matter that could affect the entire situation. He had to consider it thoroughly. He didn't know that everyone was discussing about him and the sword sect. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Xiao Chun took the initiative to visit Lin Yuan and the other 3. Today, everyone was going to return to the sword sect. Following Xiao Chun's arrival, Mu Jun was naturally the most excited. He took the initiative to wait outside the door. When he saw Xiao Chun, Mu Jun smiled and called out, "Xiao Chun." Seeing Mu Jun, the corners of Xiao Chun's mouth unconsciously twitched. This Immortal Palace's young master really gave Xiao Chun a headache. Damn, the dignified Immortal Palace's young master was actually gay. Would you believe it? Xiao Chun nodded at Mu Jun with a forced smile. Then, without waiting for Mu Jun to speak, he directly went to meet Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other 3. What a joke. Xiao Chun didn't dare to stay with Mu Jun for too long, especially when they were alone. This man had a problem in his heart. He was always thinking about how to possess her. It was called love, but was it really love? Wasn't he just lusting after her body? Seeing Xiao Chun's fleeing appearance, Mu Jun didn't insist. He looked at Xiao Chun's back and smiled. Ha! The monk can run, but the temple can't. In Mu Jun's heart, it was only a matter of time before he got Xiao Chun. How could he let the man he liked slip away from his hands? After escaping from Mu Jun, Xiao Chun arrived at the courtyard and saw Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other 3. Seeing Xiao Chun, Lin Yuan was the first to speak. "Is everything ready?" "Yes, leave the rest to the others," Xiao Chun replied with a nod. Now, all that was left was to tie up the loose ends. These matters naturally didn't require Xiao Chun's personal attention. Moreover, now that the evil god palace had been completely destroyed, the remaining evil Dao members were nothing more than weaklings. It was more than enough to let his subordinates deal with them. Lin Yuan nodded when he heard Xiao Chun's words. Then, the group prepared to set off. Lin Yuan and the other 3 headed to the sword sect. Dao Xiong, Xiao Xiao, and the others, even Yin Shun, personally sent them off. Regardless of whether they were willing to submit to the sword sect, they didn't dare to reveal their feelings in front of Lin Yuan and the other 3. This was the pressure brought about by great strength. Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian naturally didn't have much interest in these people. Therefore, without much delay, Xiao Chun and the others left the evil god palace and rushed to the sword sect. The Great Thousand World had gradually regained its peace. However, the damage caused by the war wasn't so easy to heal. Along the way, Xiao Chun did find that the Great Thousand World was much more bleak than before. This was especially so for the number of martial artists. In many places, the number of martial artists had decreased by a lot. However, there was nothing they could do about it. They could only slowly recover. Along the way, they didn't encounter any danger. If there was any danger, it would be Gu Lingyao, the 3 ladies, and Mu Jun. The 3 ladies obviously didn't have any good feelings towards Mu Jun. What a joke. This dog wanted to steal their husband. If Gu Lingyao and the other 2 ladies were to treat him nicely, they would be heartless. Faced with the hostility of Gu Lingyao and the other two ladies, Mu Jun didn't know what was good for him. From time to time, he would give Gu Lingyao and the other two ladies a lesson. What was the theory of same-sex love? This made Gu Lingyao and the other two ladies pale with anger. They were extremely angry, but they couldn't beat him. This made Gu Lingyao and the other two ladies feel very hurt. However, Xiao Chun was unlucky. The three ladies couldn't do anything to the stubborn Mu Jun. They could only vent their anger on Xiao Chun. Gu Lingyao and Hong Xiu pouted and complained to Xiao Chun. It's all because of you. If it wasn't for you, why would this annoying guy be here? Hearing the complaints of the two ladies, Xiao Chun was speechless. How could this be blamed on him? Wasn't he the victim here? As soon as they mentioned Mu Jun, the three ladies were furious. This made Xiao Chun feel helpless. Looking at the three ladies' complaints, Mu Jun sneered secretly. Hee, now you know the trouble of being a woman. Xiao Chun, I told you before, only same-sex love is true love. Gong Nantian also saw Mu Jun's actions, but he couldn't do anything about it. After all, Mu Jun wasn't an ordinary person. Gong Nantian couldn't do anything about it, and could only let him do what he wanted. With Gong Nantian's experience, how could he not see that Mu Jun was deliberately angering Gu Lingyao and the other two ladies? He wanted them to vent their anger on Xiao Chun and annoy Xiao Chun. However, Mu Jun had obviously underestimated the relationship between Xiao Chun and the three ladies. This little complaint was nothing to Xiao Chun. Moreover, Xiao Chun was secretly amused by the three ladies' angry expressions. These silly girls were so easily fooled. Xiao Chun naturally saw through Mu Jun's intentions, so he didn't care at all. Just like that, amidst the chaos along the way, they arrived at the Sword Gate safely. It had been a few years since they last met. Xiao Chun had not returned to the Sword Gate since the start of the war between the good and evil. Now that the war had ended and he could finally return to the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun sighed in his heart and muttered, "It's time for Cang Xing and the others to come back." Of course, he didn't forget about Cang Xing and the others. During the war in the Flaming Wind Realm, Xiao Chun let Cang Xing and the others fake their deaths in order to preserve the strength of the Sword Sect. Cang Xing and the others were probably still in the Flaming Wind Realm. If the people from the other forces knew that Cang Xing and the others were still alive, they would probably overthink. However, this didn't affect Xiao Chun much. Anyway, with the Sword Sect's current strength, they didn't need to fear any forces in the Great Thousand World. Therefore, they didn't need to think too much about what they did. Furthermore, even Lin Yuan and the others supported the Sword Sect and wanted the Sword Sect to control the Great Thousand World and become the ruler of the Great Thousand World. As such, Xiao Chun didn't need to fear anyone. The Sword Sect's main hall. Following the return of Xiao Chun and the others, the entire Sword Sect cheered. All the elders who had stayed in the Sword Sect also appeared to welcome them. In response, Xiao Chun simply greeted Zhao Hu and then led Lin Yuan and the others into the Sword Sect's main hall. Of course, Gu Lingyao and the other two girls left directly. Xiao Chun and the others still had other matters to discuss. Gu Lingyao and the other two girls weren't interested and simply returned to their residence to see Xiao Qing and Bai Rui, as well as Qin Shru and Fairy of 100 Flowers. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2502. Gu Lingyao and the other two girls didn't participate in the discussion with Xiao Chun and the others. After all, they didn't care too much about these things. Compared to staying with Xiao Chun and the others, the three girls were more interested in going back to see Xiao Qing, Bai Ruyu, Xiao Yao, and Xiao Lao. Gu Lingyao and the other two girls didn't participate in the discussion with Xiao Chun and the others. After all, they didn't care too much about these things. Compared to staying with Xiao Chun and the others, the three girls were more interested in going back to see Xiao Qing, Bai Ruyu, and Xiao Yao, and Xiao Lao. However, what the three girls didn't expect was that after watching the three girls leave, Mu Jun rolled his eyes and quietly followed them. Mu Jun had already told the Sword Sect about Mu Jun, Lin Yuan, Lin Feng, and the others, so Mu Jun didn't encounter any obstacles along the way and smoothly arrived at Xiao Chen's residence. At this time, Gu Lingyao and the other two girls had already entered the cave. In the courtyard, they saw Qin Shiru and Bai Hua Fairy, as well as the two boys, Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao, who had grown taller. At this time, the two boys were already 8 years old and had grown a lot taller. The battle between the righteous and evil paths didn't affect them much, so they stayed in the sword sect with Qin Shiru and Bai Hua Fairy. Seeing Gu Lingyao and the other two girls return, the two boys happily called out, "Third mother, fourth mother, fifth mother." They were raised by 5 mothers since they were young. So even though Gu Lingyao and the other two girls weren't the two boys' biological mothers, the two boys were still very close to the 3 girls. Gu Lingyao and the other two girls were in a good mood when they saw that the two boys had grown up a lot. Qin Shiru and Flower Fairy were also secretly relieved when they saw that the 3 girls had returned safely. Flower Fairy asked with a smile, "Where's my husband?" They're discussing matters in the main hall. Gu Lingyao snorted in displeasure. Upon seeing this, Qin Shiru asked in confusion, "What's wrong? It wasn't easy for you to come back, so why do you still look so resentful?" "It's all hubby's fault. It's all his fault." To Qin Shiru's question, Gu Lingyao pouted and told the truth about Mu Jun. Qin Shiru and Flower Fairy couldn't help but laugh when they heard that a man actually fell in love with Xiao Chun and even openly tried to snatch her away. He even said that only the same sex was true love. There really was such a weirdo in this world. Moreover, Mu Jun's status was so high. Seeing Qin Shiru and Flower Fairy laughing, Gu Lingyao rolled her eyes and said, still laughing, "Hubby is about to be snatched away. Little sister Lingyao, do you think hubby will like a man?" Flower Fairy replied with a smile. The two girls weren't like Gu Lingyao, so they weren't angry with Mu Jun. Moreover, they were willing to believe in Xiao Chun. Besides, would Xiao Chun like a man? So, there was no need to be angry. After hearing Flower Fairy's words, Gu Lingyao was taken aback. Then, she returned to her senses. Yes, it seemed like she was too nervous. It was impossible for hubby to like Mu Jun. Why was she worrying for nothing? She was sure that Xiao Chun was definitely a normal man, so there was nothing to worry about. But when she thought of Mu Jun, Gu Lingyao couldn't help but feel unhappy. That's true, but that guy is really annoying. Gu Lingyao had really interacted with Mu Jun. She knew that this guy was a dachskin plaster. Jintian only knew how to stick to Xiao Chun. It was so annoying. Seeing Gu Lingyao's reaction, Qin Shiru and Flower Fairy couldn't help but laugh. However, the girls obviously didn't expect that the annoying guy they were talking about had already followed Gu Lingyao and the other two girls into Xiao Chen's cave residence. Moreover, he was heading straight for Bai Riyue and Xiao Qing's residence. It was unknown what kind of expression the girls would have if they knew that Mu Jun was at Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue's residence. The two elders had always lived in the same cave residence as Xiao Chun and the others. This was also the request of the two elders. After all, they were old and always wanted to live with their family. Not to mention, they also had 2 precious grandsons. The two elders had to see each other every day. In addition, Xiao Chun was filial, so the family had never been separated. As usual, they drank tea and chatted in the courtyard. Speaking of Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue's current life, it was extremely leisurely. The two elders didn't feel any pressure. Their son was also a capable person, so their life was naturally very relaxed. After taking a sip of tea, Xiao Qing smiled faintly and looked at Bai Riyue opposite him. Didn't the people below say that Chun'er is back? As soon as Xiao Chun returned to the sword sect, someone informed Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue. Upon hearing this, the still young Bai Riyue smiled and said, "He is back, but he seems to be discussing something with someone in the main hall." After so many years, Bai Riyue hadn't changed at all. This was related to the improvement of her cultivation. However, the two elders' cultivation was basically increased by Xiao Chun using various treasures. Their actual combat strength was actually very weak. Of course, this wasn't a big deal. After all, Xiao Chun wouldn't let the two elders fight. Increasing their cultivation would only increase their lifespan. That was all. Just as Bai Riyue's voice fell, Mu Jun strode in from the courtyard door. Because he was in the sword sect, and this was Xiao Chen's cave residence, there were actually no guards, so Mu Jun easily came here. Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue looked at Mu Jun, a young man who was even more beautiful than a woman. Bai Riyue was stunned, while Xiao Qing asked doubtfully, "Young friend," he thought that Mu Jun was Xiao Chen's friend. As for whether he was a villain, Xiao Qing didn't think about it at all. After all, it was strange that someone could casually enter Xiao Chen's cave residence in the sword sect. However, before Xiao Qing could finish speaking, Mu Jun quickly walked in front of the two elders. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "Father, Mother, I have finally met the both of you." What's going on?" Mu Jun's words of father and mother stunned Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue. Looking at Mu Jun, who threw himself into his arms, Xiao Qing turned to look at Bai Riyue. His eyes seemed to be asking, "Madam, we have a son? Why don't I remember?" When Mu Jun called them father and mother, the two elders were completely stunned. When Bai Riyue came back to her senses, she looked at Mu Jun in confusion and asked, "Child, what are you?" "Mom, Xiao Chun and I are truly in love. We have already cooked rice, so Xiao Chen's parents are naturally my parents." "Dad, Mom, my name is Mu Jun, don't worry. Xiao Chun and I will be filial to you two in the future." Mu Jun's eyes revealed a smile as he thought to himself, "Haha, you stupid women didn't expect this, did you? This young master will directly make a move on Xiao Chen's parents and take drastic measures to deal with him." As soon as he arrived at the sword sect, Mu Jun went straight to Xiao Chen's cave residence to curry favor with the two elders. What a joke! If he could even take down Xiao Chen's parents, then wouldn't things be much simpler? As the saying goes, marriage matters are decided by the words of the matchmaker and the parents' orders. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 25:03. Mu Jun was very satisfied with this move of hers. Looking at Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue's shocked expressions, Mu Jun felt incomparably refreshed. As long as she settled Xiao Chen's parents, with Xiao Chen's temper, he definitely wouldn't go against the two elders' wishes. Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue didn't know what Mu Jun was thinking, but after hearing Mu Jun's words, they were stunned for a moment. They looked at each other, and then Xiao Qing said with some astonishment, "Child, what do you mean by that? What did Chinner do to you? What do you mean by uncooked rice?" The two elders had conservative personalities and had never encountered such a thing in their lives. Hearing Mu Jun's words about uncooked rice, Xiao Qing couldn't wrap his head around it for a moment. Facing Xiao Qing's question, Mu Jun's acting skills were off the charts. She looked like a weeping beauty as she complained tearfully, "Father, Mother, Xiao Chun and I are truly in love. Although we haven't known each other for a long time, it was love at first sight. Xiao Chun also loves me very much and even took over my body. But Xiao Chun is already married and has a wife." So, halfway through, Mu Jun burst into tears, but she had already expressed what she wanted to express. She believed that Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue could also understand what she wanted to say. The two elders indeed understood what Mu Jun wanted to say, but when they heard these words, they only felt dizzy. Gay, their son is gay. From Mu Jun's words, how could the two elders not understand that this unbelievably beautiful young man in front of them actually had an affair with their son? Both of them were men, but they fell in love with each other. What a melodramatic thing this was. Moreover, Xiao Chun was married and had a wife and children. At this time, Xiao Chun could fight Mu, not to mention that the other party was a man. For a moment, Xiao Qing and Bai Riyue felt as if their brains had crashed. They were in a daze. Mu Jun's words were really too much of a blow to the two elders. Seeing that the two elders had fallen into a daze, Mu Jun added fuel to the fire. "Dad, Mom, don't worry. Although Xiao Chan doesn't accept me, I will definitely be filial to you. I know Xiao Chen's difficulties. After all, he already has a family. I only regret that we didn't meet earlier." He fainted, completely fainted. According to Mu Jun, Xiao Chun loved Mu Jun, but because of Qin Shiru, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Wan, Xiao Chun could only reluctantly give up his love for Mu Jun. What the hell was going on? This stinky brat hadn't returned for a few years, and the moment he returned, he gave his father such a big surprise. Did he get himself a daughter-in-law? No, she shouldn't call her daughter-in-law. She should call him her daughter-in-law. Two men. Xiao Qing took a deep breath and forcefully calmed the anger in his heart. He first looked at Mu Jun with a complicated expression, then revealed a wry smile. The corners of his eyes twitched unconsciously. Child, did you really do that? Yes, on a stormy night, Xiao Chun, he took over my body. Mu Jun nodded and said with tears in his eyes. At this moment, Mu Jun had completely let himself go. Anyway, as long as he could get Xiao Chun, it didn't matter what methods he used. Moreover, Mu Jun could see that Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue were definitely honest people. They couldn't see through Mu Jun's acting at all. Hearing this, Xiao Qing was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. He immediately shouted angrily, "This little bastard, he's crazy. I will break his legs today." It had been many years since Xiao Qing was so angry. After all, for so many years, Xiao Qin's performance made the two elders feel gratified and proud. There was nothing else to nitpick about. But who would have thought that Xiao Chan would actually do such an outrageous thing this time? Moreover, the other party was a man. This made Xiao Qing's face turn red. What kind of joke was this? A dignified man of the Xiao family was actually gay. How could he face the ancestors in the future? Could it be that he had to tell the ancestors that the most promising junior of the Xiao family was actually gay? Moreover, what was even worse was that Xiao Chun and Mu Jun actually had sex. This made the stubborn Xiao Qing unable to accept it. Hearing Xiao Qing's words, Mu Jun was overjoyed, but on the surface, he still pretended to be wronged and said, "Father, don't blame Xiao Chun. I also did it willingly. But Xiao Chun has a family. This is also a fact." Mu Jun pretended to take all the blame on himself. Xiao Qing was unable to restrain his anger. Seeing this, even Bai Ruyue, who was at the side, spoke up to persuade him. "All right, calm down first. It won't be good if outsiders hear this. After all, Chen is the master of sect." "Bullshit, look at what he has done. Is this something that a sect master can do? Today, I will beat this stinking brat to death. Men, come." Xiao Qing shouted angrily. Soon, Qing Yao walked in. Seeing the furious Xiao Qing, Qing Yao was stunned. It had been many years since she saw the old man so angry. What happened? Qing Yao didn't dare to ask too much. She bowed and said, "Old master, go, get that stinking brat to come back and see me." Xiao Qing shouted angrily as he looked at Qing Yao. He was really angry. Xiao Chan was simply too embarrassing. Hearing Xiao Qing's words, although Qing Yao was puzzled, she still bowed and replied. Then, she turned and strode out of the courtyard. After Qing Yao left, Xiao Qing angrily sat back on the chair. At the same time, on the other side, Qin Shu, 100-flower fairy, and Gu Ling Yao were chatting, also heard that Mu Jun was in the old couple's courtyard. Moreover, the old man was furious. Looking at Fei Mei, who had specially come to report, Gu Ling Yao immediately jumped up and said with a cold expression, "What did you say? Mu Jun is with the old man and old woman?" "Yes, I don't know what they said. The old man is very angry now. He has already asked Qing Yao to call the young master back." Fei Mei replied truthfully. Hearing Fei Mei's words, Gu Ling Yao and the other women were completely stunned. To be honest, Mu Jun's counterattack had indeed caught them off guard. Who would have thought that this guy actually went to see the old man? Moreover, they didn't know what he said to the old man to make him so angry. After being stunned for a while, Gu Ling Yao couldn't sit still anymore. She quickly walked out of the courtyard and said as she walked, "No, I have to go and see. This guy definitely doesn't have good intentions. He's very evil." Seeing this, Qin Shu, 100-flower fairy, and the other women quickly followed. After all, the old man's anger was no small matter. Although Xiao Chun was now the sect master, the old man's words still carried a lot of weight in this family. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2504. Gu Lingyao and the other girls hurriedly rushed towards the old man's residence. On the way, Gu Lingyao continuously cursed. That damn guy. Why did he run over to the old man's place? How hateful. Gu Lingyao didn't have a good impression of Mu Jun. This guy was so annoying that he actually wanted to steal her husband. The girls arrived at the old man's residence. As soon as they entered the courtyard, they saw the old man sitting in the pavilion in the courtyard with a bitter smile on his face. Beside him was Bai Ryue, who was smiling bitterly, and Mu Jun was busy making tea for the old man. There was a filial smile on his face. However, Mu Jun's smile, coupled with his face that was more beautiful than a woman's, did indeed give people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze. However, in Gu Lingyao's eyes, this smile was hypocritical no matter how she looked at it. Gu Lingyao and the other girls arrived in front of the old man. Seeing that the girls were all here, the old man's expression didn't change. You're all here. Father, what's wrong with you? Why are you so angry? Hearing this, Hundred Flower Fairy asked softly. Hearing Hundred Flower Fairy's words, the old man coldly snorted, "Humph, don't you know what's going on?" His attitude was obviously not good. However, on second thought, this had nothing to do with the women. In other words, the women were also victims. Thinking of this, the anger in the old man's heart increased a little. He thought that when the unfilial son came back later, he would teach him a lesson. It seems that because of the rise in his status and power these years, he had become a little arrogant. Today, the old man would teach him a lesson. No matter who you are, no matter how high your status is, no matter how much power you have, no matter how strong your cultivation is, your father will always be your father. And a father beating his son is a matter of course. The anger in his heart towards Xiao Chun increased again. However, his attitude towards Gu Lingyao and the other girls was much better. Xiao Qing even felt a little guilty towards the girls. Xiao Qing was naturally very satisfied with his daughters-in-law. After so many years, the girls were very filial to him and Bai Ryue. She was such a good child, yet that unfilial son was still fooling around outside. He really didn't know what was good for him. With a smile on his face, Xiao Qing looked at Qin Shiru and the other women and said, "Sai, it's all that unfilial son's fault. This old man doesn't know what to say, but don't worry, I will definitely seek justice for you." Upon hearing the old man's words, Qin Shiru and the other women were stunned. Justice? What justice? The women naturally didn't know what Mu Jun had said to the old man, but before the women could speak, Mu Jun took the lead and spoke first. "Father, don't blame Xiao Chun. He had no choice. After all, he was married into the family. Actually, I don't really care. As long as I can stay by Xiao Chin's side, I don't care about my status." When Mu Jun said this, he revealed a sorrowful expression. Seeing this, the old man kept sighing, and the women were confused. They didn't know what this guy was talking about. Also, why did he call the old man father? Wasn't this how they addressed him? What did this guy have to do with the old man? The women were puzzled and realized that something was wrong. Gu Lingyao couldn't hold back her anger and shouted at Mu Jun, "What did you say to father? I'm warning you. If you dare to spout nonsense, I will never let you off." Gu Lingyao immediately revealed a strong hostility from the start. In this regard, Mu Jun didn't need to say anything as the old man had already spoken. "All right, girl. Father knows that you were wronged, but Mu Jun is also wronged. No matter what, you are all victims. If you want to blame someone, blame that unfilial son. It's all his fault." The old man didn't seem to be surprised by Gu Lingyao's hostility towards Mu Jun. However, Gu Lingyao couldn't sit still after hearing this. She looked at the old man and said anxiously, "Father, don't listen to his nonsense. This person is very despicable." From the old man's point of view, Mu Jun and Xiao Chun were true love, and Gu Lingyao and Mu Jun were rivals in love. Therefore, the old man took Gu Lingyao's words as words of anger. He didn't believe it all. Instead, the old man comforted her. "Girl, father knows that you have been wronged. Don't worry, father will definitely give you an explanation. When that brat comes back, father will teach him a lesson. The old man and Gu Lingyao weren't on the same channel at all. In this regard, Gu Lingyao naturally couldn't wait. Seeing this, although Mu Jun still looked filial on the surface, he was laughing miserably in his heart. Looking at Gu Lingyao's anxious look, Mu Jun laughed in his heart. Little girl, you want to snatch this young master's man with just a few of you? Your skills aren't good enough. Learn more. As he spoke, Mu Jun handed the brewed tea to the old man and pretended to be calm. Father, don't blame them. If you want to talk about it, it's my fault. After all, I came later. Moreover, if it wasn't for me, this wouldn't have happened. Hey, speak clearly. What's the matter? Hearing Mu Jun's words, Gu Lingyao immediately questioned him. However, Mu Jun didn't seem to have any intention of paying attention to her. At this moment, the old man sighed and said, Child, Sai, it's really hard on you. Father, I'm not hard on you. For Xiao Chun, I'm willing to do anything. Hearing this, Mu Jun said pretentiously. The conversation between the old man and the young man made Gu Lingyao and the other girls roll their eyes. At the same time, they were also confused. What exactly was going on? Just as Gu Lingyao and the other girls arrived at the courtyard, Qing Yao also arrived at the sword sect's main hall. As Xiao Chen's personal maid, and having followed Xiao Chen for so many years, although Qing Yao was one of the 4 girls, her status in the sword sect was very high. Even the deputy sect leader like Song Xing didn't dare to offend her. No one stopped her as she entered the main hall. In the main hall, Xiao Chun, who was originally discussing matters with Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, Jun Wuya, and the others, frowned when he saw Qing Yao walking in. If there was nothing wrong, Qing Yao definitely wouldn't disturb him at this time. What would be wrong with Qing Yao? Could something have happened at home? He looked at Qing Yao curiously. Under Xiao Chen's gaze, Qing Yao quickly walked to Xiao Chen's side and whispered in his ear, Young master, the old man is furious. He wants you to go back quickly. Father is angry? And he wants me to go back quickly? Hearing this, Xiao Chun was stunned. He didn't know what was going on. In his memory, his father hadn't been angry for a long time. This was a little strange. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2505. Xiao Chan was slightly taken aback by Qing Yao's arrival, especially when he heard the old man flying into a rage. Xiao Chan was even more confused. He had just returned to the sword sect, so why was the old man so angry? He didn't seem to have done anything. Could it be Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao? Xiao Chan was slightly taken aback by Qing Yao's arrival, especially when he heard the old man flying into a rage. Xiao Chen was even more confused. He had just returned to the sword sect, so why was the old man so angry? He didn't seem to have done anything. Could it be Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao? Xiao Chen was puzzled, but it was obviously not the time to leave. Although he had said most of what needed to be said, Lin Yuan and Nan Gongguan were still present. Xiao Chun naturally couldn't just get up and leave. Xiao Chun gestured for Xiao Chun to wait for him outside the main hall. Then he smiled helplessly at Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others. Seniors, please excuse me. My father might be in a hurry to see me. Gong Nantian smiled and replied, It's human nature. Since that's the case, let's call it a day. Anyway, we've already said what we needed to say. He knew that Xiao Chun hadn't seen his parents for several years. Now that Xiao Chun had returned to the sword sect, it was normal for his parents to miss him dearly. Lin Yuan and the others didn't say anything when they heard Gong Nantian's words. Gong Nantian personally arranged accommodations for everyone. However, Xiao Chun also realized that Mu Jun wasn't around. Gong Nantian didn't care about this because there was probably no existence in the Great Thousand World that could threaten Mu Jun. Given Mu Jun's strength, no one could do anything to him unless there was an ancestor. There was definitely no ancestor in the Great Thousand World now. Moreover, with Gong Nantian's strength, he had already sensed Mu Jun's location. He was in the sword sect. Although Gong Nantian didn't know that Mu Jun's immortal cave was Xiao Chen's residence, he didn't care too much about it. After settling everyone down, Xiao Chen hurried home with Qing Yao. On the way, Xiao Chun asked in confusion, What's wrong with the old master? I don't know either, but a young man went to visit the two elders, and then the old man flew into a rage. It should have something to do with that young man, Qing Yao replied. Qing Yao did not overhear the conversation between the old master and Mu Jun, so she naturally did not know what had happened. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun frowned slightly. A young man? For some reason, Xiao Chun suddenly thought of Mu Jun's figure. Could it be that this dog was causing trouble? Third brother, little brother, wait a moment. Just as Xiao Chun hurried home, Long Qing and Xin Yuanling quickly caught up with him. They said that they wanted to go back with Xiao Chun. After all, it had been such a long time, and the two of them should pay the two elders a visit. Xiao Chun did not reject Long Qing and Xin Yuanling's suggestion. Thus, the four of them hurried home. After entering the immortal cave, they went all the way to the courtyard where the two elders lived. Before they even entered, Xiao Chun heard an argument in the courtyard. It seemed to be Gu Lingyao, Hong Xiu, and the others. In addition, there was another man's voice. It's really him. Upon hearing the voice, Xiao Chun immediately understood. It was that dog Mu Jun. He was causing trouble. Previously, he had suspected that the young man Qing Yao spoke of was Mu Jun. He did not expect it to be true. Xiao Chun gently exhaled and strode into the courtyard. At a glance, he saw Gu Lingyao, Hong Xiu, and the other girls. He also saw Mu Jun, who had an innocent and pained expression, and the old master, whose face was ashen. The situation was obviously not good. With the arrival of Xiao Chun, everyone looked at Xiao Chun. The old master even stood up and shouted angrily, "You unfilial son, get your ass over here." It seemed that the old master was really angry. Even Bai Riyue sat silently at the side this time. Clearly, she had tacitly approved of the old master's actions. Upon hearing the old master's words, Xiao Chun stepped forward and called out softly, "Father." You still know that I'm your father? I thought head sect master Xiao had long forgotten about that. The old master coldly snorted. Hearing this, Xiao Chun glared fiercely at Mu Jun. However, Mu Jun did not mind at all. He even put on an act and said, "Xiao Chun, it's all my fault. It's all my fault." Ignoring Mu Jun, Xiao Chun looked at the old master and asked suspiciously, "Father, what's going on? Why are you so angry? What's wrong?" Head sect master Xiao, it seems that you've gotten used to everything these years. You don't even understand the most basic principles of being a person. The old master coldly shouted. What baffling. Hearing the old master's words, Xiao Chun did not understand at all. He didn't seem to have done anything, right? Why do you make it sound like he was unpardonably evil? Seeing Xiao Chun's suspicious expression, the old master continued. All right, I'll let you die a little clearer today. Let me ask you, Shuru, are Bai Hua and the others your wives? Yes. All right, then Xiao Qing, is Xiao Lao your son? Yes. Since that's the case, are you married? Yes, no. Father, what are you trying to say? Xiao Chun was about to be confused by his youngest son. Seeing that Xiao Chun was still ignorant, the old master was already burning with anger. As a man of the Xiao family, he dared to do something but did not dare to admit it. This was what angered the old master the most. However, the old master clearly did not know that Xiao Chun really did not understand anything. The anger in the old master's eyes continued to rise as he finally shouted angrily. All right, since you know, why did you still provoke Mu Jun? Since you provoked him, why did you abandon him? As a husband and a father, you have no responsibility to your wife and children. You flirted outside, and in the end, you abandoned him. Is this the way I taught you since you were young? And as soon as the old master said this, Xiao Chun seemed to understand something. Sure enough, it was Mu Jun's masterpiece. He must have spouted some nonsense to the old master, but the old master still believed it. Damn, this dog was extremely sinister. He actually reached his hands out to his parents. As his son, Xiao Chun was very clear about his youngest son's temper. Moreover, Xiao Chun inherited a lot of his temper from the old master. Like Xiao Chun, the old master's personality was also very stubborn and even a little stubborn. It might not be obvious normally, but once the old master set his mind on something, it was basically impossible to pull him back. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was stubborn. The current situation was that the old master already believed Mu Jun's words, which was why the old master was so angry. Glaring fiercely at Mu Jun, Xiao Chun said helplessly, "Father, who did you hear this from? First of all, how could I do such a thing? Even if I did, he is a man. How could I have feelings for a man? How can you believe this guy's words? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of this chapter. Chapter 2506. The old man's reprimand made Xiao Chun want to cry. How could he fall in love with a man? Also, wasn't the old man too gullible? Mu Jun believed him just because he said a few words? Xiao Chun naturally didn't know that it wasn't that the old man was gullible. It was entirely because Mu Jun's acting was too realistic. Under Mu Jun's performance, the old man was completely trapped. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the old man was still angry. Mu Jun said pitifully, "Father, don't blame Xiao Chun. I just want to be by Xiao Chen's side." "Shut up," Xiao Chun snapped at Mu Jun. "This guy was just here to stir up trouble." Mu Jun's actions made Xiao Chun feel both helpless and angry. Who would have thought that Mu Jun would actually find his parents? This was simply too much. Facing the angry old man, Xiao Chun had no choice but to bring the two elders to the room and explain the matter in detail to them. He didn't have any feelings for Mu Jun at all, and nothing happened between the two of them. Under Xiao Chen's patient explanation, the old man's expression softened a little. Bairuya, who was beside him, also helped to say, "Chinur wouldn't do such a ridiculous thing. Don't you trust your own son?" With Bairuyue's help, the old man calmed down and thought for a while. He felt that the two's words were reasonable. It seemed that he had indeed misunderstood. Finally, he explained clearly to the old man. Xiao Chen secretly sighed in relief and left the room. Seeing that Mu Jun still hadn't left, Xiao Chan snapped, "Come with me." After saying that, without waiting for Mu Jun's reply, Xiao Chen directly dragged Mu Jun out of the old man's residence. As for Gu Ling Yao, Qin Shu, and the other women, they stayed behind to accompany the two elders. On the way out of his cave, Xiao Chun turned to look at Lord Xingmu. After a moment of silence, he said, "What do you want?" "It's nothing. I just want to tell them that I like you." "What's wrong?" Mu Jun said with an innocent expression. Mu Jun obviously knew that Xiao Chun had explained it clearly, but so what? Anyway, Mu Jun didn't think that he could succeed with just this little trick. Moreover, the key was still Xiao Chun. If Xiao Chun didn't accept him, what was the point of others saying it? Looking at Mu Jun's innocent face, Xiao Chun felt helpless. Why did he have to meet such a person? Yet this fellow was Immortal Palace's young master, his status noble, yet he was actually gay. Xiao Chun didn't know what to say to Mu Jun. Anyway, he had said everything he needed to say, but this guy didn't listen at all. What could he do? Looking at Mu Jun in front of him, Xiao Chun was silent for a while before he said helplessly, "Go back. Also, don't harass my parents in the future." Xiao Chun couldn't do anything to Mu Jun. He was like a dog-skin plaster, the kind that couldn't be torn off. Now, Xiao Chun could only hope that Mu Jun wouldn't harass Xiao Qing and Bairuyue. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Mu Jun nodded straightforwardly and said, "Okay, if you don't like it, I won't go." After a few words, Xiao Chun urged Mu Jun to leave. He had already prepared a place for Gong Nantian and the others. Xiao Chun waved his hand weakly and told Mu Jun to go rest. Looking at Mu Jun's back, Xiao Chun really didn't know what to say. How could he be bothered by a man? Sigh. After returning to his residence, Xiao Chun accompanied the two elders for dinner that night. After all, they hadn't seen each other for so many years, and the two elders really missed him. After dinner, they returned to their residence. Xiao Chun looked at Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao in front of him. They were already 7 or 8 years old and had grown a lot taller, which made Xiao Chun feel quite gratified. Moreover, their cultivation had also increased a lot in the past few years. It seemed like they hadn't been slacking off. Xiao Chun really wasn't a very good father. After all, ever since Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao were born, he hadn't spent much time with them. Most of the time, he didn't fulfill his responsibility as a father, but there was nothing he could do about it. Too many things had happened during this time, especially the outbreak of the war between the righteous and evil. Xiao Chun was even more preoccupied with it. It felt good to be at home. After a comfortable night's rest, Xiao Chun had just woken up from his cultivation when Li Ku personally came to Xiao Chun. Sect Master, Vice Sect Master Song Xing, and the others have returned. Xiao Chun was delighted to hear that Song Xing and the others had returned. Back then, in order to preserve the strength of the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun deliberately allowed Song Xing and the others to fake their deaths and stay in the Flame Wind Realm. Now that the war between the righteous and evil was over, Song Xing and the others could naturally return. With smiles on their faces, Xiao Chun and Li Ke quickly arrived at the Sword Sect's main hall and sought Song Xing and the others. Seeing that everyone was fine, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "It's good that you're back." The return of Song Xing and the others might make the other factions unhappy, but Xiao Chun did not care about this. With the Sword Sect's current strength, they could completely ignore the other factions' thoughts. Moreover, after discussing with Gong Nantian, Lin Yuan, and the others yesterday, the four of them were prepared to help the Sword Sect increase its strength. Jun Wuya was already a half-step progenitor. If Jun Wuya could truly break through to the progenitor realm, the Sword Sect would undoubtedly become the strongest faction. At that time, which faction would dare to have any opinions about the Sword Sect? Strength was everything. It was true that one could do whatever one wanted with strength. After staying in the Flaming Wind boundary for several years, Xiao Chun chatted with Song Xing and the others for a while before asking them to go back and rest. Now that the battle between the good and evil had ended, the Great Thousand World should be peaceful for a while. Just as Xiao Chun had guessed, the return of Song Xing and the others did not escape the attention of some people. Mu Tianshan, Yun Chun, and Yun Tianyi immediately received the news. After knowing that Song Xing and the others were not dead, Yun Tianyi said with an ugly expression, "Father, we were tricked by Xiao Chun." Back in the Flaming Wind boundary, Song Xing and the others did not die at all. They were hidden by Xiao Chun. The fact that Song Xing and the others were not dead undoubtedly meant that the Sword Sect strength was still at its peak. At the very least, the Sword Sect did not lose many people at the level of a deputy sect master. This was obviously not good news for Yun Tianyi and Yun Chun, because the stronger the Sword Sect was, the harder it would be for them to contend against it. After hearing Yun Tianyi's words, Yun Chun sighed and said, "The Sword Sect is at its peak. Tianyi, are you really going to insist on your choice? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." In a chapter. Chapter 25:07. The return of Song Xing and the rest had indeed greatly increased the strength of the Sword Sect. All along, many forces had thought that Song Xing and the rest were dead. However, no one had expected that all of this had been arranged by Xiao Chun. In the face of the Sword Sect at its peak, which force would dare to provoke a sect with two emperors? That was why Yin Chun had said such a thing. However, after hearing his father's words, Yin Tianyi said without hesitation, "Father, are you really willing to submit to the Sword Sect just like that?" Yin Tianyi was obviously unwilling to submit to the Sword Sect just like that. However, Yin Chun sighed and said, "What can I do even if I'm unwilling? Tianyi, do you know what the consequences will be if you fail?" "But if we succeed, we will be able to gain a lot," Yin Tianyi replied. Yin Tianyi was willing to gamble, even if he had to sacrifice the entire Mutian Mountain. After hearing his son's words, Yin Chun was silent for a long time before he said with a smile, "You little brat, it seems like I'm really old. Since that's the case, let's give it a try." Given the relationship between Mutian Mountain and the Sword Sect, Yin Chun was naturally unwilling to submit to the Sword Sect. Moreover, his senior brother, Tao Ming, had ended up in such a state. How could Xiao Chun not have anything to do with it? In Yun Chun's opinion, it was because of Xiao Chun that Tao Ming had betrayed the Great Thousand World and ended up in such a state. It was inevitable that people would be subjective when considering problems. As Tao Ming's junior brother, Yin Shun was naturally more considerate of Tao Ming. Yin Shun and Yin Tianyi were unwilling to submit to Xiao Chun. However, Xiao Chun did not know about this and naturally did not care. After all, the sword sect's current strength was not something that Mu Tian Mountain could contend with. There was no need to care about Mu Tian Mountain's attitude. The Great Thousand World quickly regained its peace, and the sword sect became the #1 sect in the Great Thousand World. Now, the disciples of the sword sect were definitely existences that could not be provoked in the Great Thousand World. Furthermore, every disciple of the sword sect was extremely confident. They knew that their sect was the #1 sect in the Great Thousand World. Since they were disciples of the #1 sect, they naturally had their own pride. Of course, Xiao Qin also strictly ordered the disciples of the sword sect not to cause trouble outside and bully others. Moreover, they were not allowed to kill the innocent and bully others. Once they were discovered, they would be punished severely. With Xiao Qin's strict orders, the sword sect disciples had a good reputation outside. No one did anything that would damage the reputation of the sword sect. Furthermore, because the sword sect was already the #1 sect in the Great Thousand World, its cultivation resources had reached the peak, and the treatment of its disciples, deacons, and elders had also improved. For a time, many experts and geniuses in the Great Thousand World began to move, and they all planned to join the sword sect. However, as the sword sect became stronger, the sword sect's requirements for recruiting disciples became stricter. One might be a genius in the outside world, but in the sword sect, this did not apply. If one could not pass the sword sect's test, one would not be able to join the sword sect. Furthermore, one might be a genius in the outside world, but in the sword sect, one might not be outstanding at all. It cannot be helped. It was not an exaggeration to say that the sword sect was full of talents. Almost every disciple was talented, and it was difficult for ordinary people to join the sword sect. This was also Xiao Qin's order. Although the sword sect was powerful, Xiao Chun still did not plan to act recklessly. He still walked the path of elites. Therefore, even though the sword sect was now in the limelight in the Great Thousand World, to be honest, the number of disciples in the sword sect did not increase by much. However, even with such strict rules, many people still flocked to the sword sect in a month's time. As a result, the sword sect had also recruited many experts. Not only the younger generation's geniuses, but even many of the older generation's experts had also chosen to join the sword sect. As long as these experts did not have a problem with their temperament, cultivation base, and combat strength, Xiao Chun would not reject them. With the addition of these experts, the sword sect's strength had once again increased tremendously. With the current strength of the sword sect, it would not be difficult for them to annihilate any of the Ling Tian sects. However, the other Ling Tian sects were also tactful. Nobody dared to stand out and say anything. Even the Saber sect, Moon Palace, and Heavenly Policy Mansion had already expressed their willingness to follow the sword sect and acknowledge the sword sect's position as the overlord. The development of the sword sect was undoubtedly heading in a good direction. Xiao Chun was pleased about this. However, during this period of time, Xiao Qin's focus was not on this. Instead, he was more concerned about Jun Wuya's situation. Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other three planned to help the sword sect increase their strength. The best way to increase their strength was to let Jun Wuya break through to the ancestor stage. If the sword sect had a true ancestor stage expert, then in the entire great wide world, there would probably be no one who could threaten the sword sect's position. Therefore, during this month, Jun Wuya had been learning from Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other three. Previously, because he did not have any connections and could only rely on himself, Jun Wuya had not broken through to the ancestor stage. However, during this month, under the guidance of Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others, Jun Wuya had indeed improved quite a bit. Moreover, Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other three had taken out many good things to help Jun Wuya break through. Jun Wuya's breakthrough was different from Xie Tian's kind of excessive enthusiasm. In the eyes of Lin Yuan, Gong Nan Tian, and the other three, the gains did not make up for the losses. It was best to let Jun Wuya rely on his own strength to break through to the ancestor stage. In addition, Jun Wuya had been stuck at the half-step ancestor stage for so many years, so his foundation was enough. The reason why he had not broken through was entirely because he lacked an opportunity. But now, it was clear that the opportunity had come. Moreover, in terms of talent, Jun Wuya was clearly better than Xie Tian. Therefore, it was not very difficult for Jun Wuya to break through to the ancestor stage. After a month of learning, Jun Wuya felt that he had faintly touched the threshold of the ancestor stage and was on the verge of breaking through. With the feeling of breaking through, Jun Wuya prepared to go into seclusion. However, before this, Jun Wuya found Xiao Chun. The master and disciple sat across from each other. Looking at Xiao Chun, Jun Wuya said with a faint smile, "Chun'er, master is going into seclusion." Disciple congratulates master in advance for breaking through to the ancestor stage. Hearing this, Xiao Chun also said with a smile, Jun Wuya being able to break through to the ancestor stage was definitely a good thing for Xiao Chun. Therefore, when he heard Jun Wuya's words, Xiao Chun was also happy from the bottom of his heart. Faced with Xiao Chun's congratulations, Jun Wuya waved his hand and said, "Kid, it's still not certain whether you can succeed or not. All right, Master is just telling you. If there are no accidents, Master will officially go into seclusion tonight. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation." Chapter 25:08. Jun Wuya went into closed-door cultivation that night. This closed-door cultivation was extremely important to Jun Wuya. Whether he could break through to the ancestor realm depended on this closed-door cultivation. Jun Wuya went into closed-door cultivation that night. This closed-door cultivation was extremely important to Jun Wuya. Whether he could break through to the ancestor realm depended on this closed-door cultivation. Although Lin Yuan and the other three had provided a lot of help to Jun Wuya during this closed-door cultivation, whether he could break through to the ancestor realm depended on Jun Wuya's own ability. However, according to Gong Nan Tian, Jun Wuya had been at the half-step ancestor realm for so many years, and his foundation was completely sufficient in all aspects. In addition to the help of the four of them, Jun Wuya had a great chance of breaking through to the ancestor realm if nothing went wrong. Not many people knew about Jun Wuya's closed-door cultivation, but on the other side, Yin Tianyi and Yun Chun had begun to take action secretly. They secretly contacted the Tianyin Tower, Talisman Sect, and other major forces. The Saber Sect, Moon Palace, and Heavenly Policy Mansion had clearly expressed their submission to the Sword Sect. Therefore, Mu Tianshan definitely could not rely on these three major forces, and they could only choose other forces. However, Yin Tianyi and Yun Chen's actions were not smooth because there was really no force that dared to be enemies with the current Sword Sect. Therefore, even though Yin Tianyi and Yun Chen had secretly contacted many forces, there were not many forces that were truly willing to deal with the Sword Sect together with them. This made Yin Tianyi and Yun Chen extremely disappointed, and it even made them feel a little hopeless. Xiao Chen naturally did not know about Mu Tianshan's actions. At that moment, Xiao Chun had also followed Lin Yuan and the others to Tenzu's residence after settling all the major and minor matters in the Sword Sect. After the battle between the good and evil had ended, Tenzu had also returned to the small world that he lived in. Tenzu did not say much about the arrival of Lin Yuan and the others. Although Lin Yuan and the other three were strong, they were not from the great wide world, so they did not have a deep relationship with Tenzu. In a simple wooden hut, everyone sat together and looked at Lin Yuan, Gong Nan Tian, and the other three. Tenzu didn't say anything, but when he saw Xiao Chun, Tenzu smiled and nodded. Xiao Chun could no longer be treated as a junior. With his Emperor Realm cultivation, Xiao Chun truly stood at the peak of the Great Thousand World. Lin Yuan didn't know the purpose of their visit, but he was a straightforward person. He looked at Tenzu and said bluntly, "We are here for this kid." Lin Yuan pointed at Xiao Chun as he spoke. Tenzu was taken aback when he heard Lin Yuan's words. However, Lin Yuan did not keep them in suspense. This kid is not bad, and he's from your great thousand world. I think you won't be stingy. We hope that you can take out some source energy for this kid to cultivate. Source energy? Tenzu was stunned when he heard Lin Yuan's words. He did not expect that Lin Yuan and the other three would come here to ask for source energy for Xiao Chun. Jun Weia was in secluded cultivation, and with the help of Lin Yuan and the other three, he was likely to break through to the ancestor realm this time. Next, it was naturally Xiao Chen's turn. Compared to Jun Weia, Lin Yuan and the other three were naturally more optimistic about Xiao Chen. Therefore, it was understandable for them to personally come forward to ask for source energy for Xiao Chun. Tenzu fell silent when he heard Lin Yuan's words. Source energy was the source energy of a universe, and it couldn't be used easily. Lin Yuan was not anxious when he saw Tenzu hesitating. He spoke slowly. As Tenzu, you should know the current situation of the Great Thousand World. Without the birth of a world master, the Great Thousand World can only be a fish on the chopping block. When facing other universes, it can only be powerless. The situation of the Great Thousand World was indeed very awkward. There was no other way. Without a world master, the Great Thousand World simply did not have the ability to compete with other universes. The implication of Lin Yuan's words was that he felt that Xiao Chun could become the world master of the Great Thousand World. Xiao Chun had hopes of becoming the world master of the Great Thousand World, but Tenzu's approval would definitely be indispensable. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Tenzu subconsciously looked at Xiao Chun, but Xiao Chun did not say anything. To be honest, Tenzu was very optimistic about Xiao Chun. After all, in the entire Great Thousand World, no one else could compare to Xiao Chun. Dao Xiong, Xiao Xiao, and the other young geniuses who used to be on an equal footing with Xiao Chun were now far behind Xiao Chun. Moreover, the current Great Thousand World had attracted the attention of other universes, and they were indeed anxious to have a world master. However, although Tenzu was optimistic about Xiao Chun, whether Xiao Chun could eventually become the world master was not something Tenzu could decide. Tenzu could help Xiao Chun, but whether Xiao Chun could succeed or not depended on himself. Moreover, Xiao Chen's cultivation was still too low. He had not even reached the ancestor state, let alone the world master. Therefore, Tenzu was not confident that Xiao Chun could eventually become the world master. Tenzu pondered for a long time before he finally looked at Lin Yuan and the others and asked, "What do you plan to do with the Great Thousand World in the future? Do you want me to become your puppet?" After all, Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, Lin Hu, and Yu Luo were not from the Great Thousand World. Therefore, Tenzu was still wary of the four of them. Although Lin Yuan and the other three were trying their best to help Xiao Chun, who knew what their purpose was. Was it just to support a puppet and then control the Great Thousand World, or was there something else? Tenzu naturally did not want the Great Thousand World to become a puppet of other universes. Upon hearing this, Gong Nantian laughed. "You're worrying too much. Putting aside the fact that we don't have any thoughts about the Great Thousand World, do you think this kid is willing to be a puppet?" As he spoke, Gong Nantian smiled and pointed at Xiao Chun. Given Xiao Chen's character, he was naturally not someone who was willing to be a puppet. After hearing Gong Nantian's words, Tenzu fell silent. On the other hand, Xiao Chun did not say a word from the beginning to the end. Xiao Chun did want to become the world master. However, just as Tenzu was worried, Xiao Chun would definitely not agree to become a puppet of the Cloud Palace or the Immortal Palace. He only cooperated with the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace because each of them wanted what they needed. Moreover, the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace had never said that they wanted him to be a puppet. After a long silence, Tenzu finally looked up at Xiao Chun and said, "Let Xiao Chun stay. I'll arrange for him to cultivate." Tenzu's words clearly meant that he agreed. Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other three did not refuse. Since Tenzu was willing to give Xiao Chun his origin energy, the four of them naturally would not say anything more. Gong Nantian smiled and said, "That's great. We'll take our leave first then." Tenzu did not ask Gong Nantian and the other three to stay. After all, he was still quite wary of the four of them, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2509. Lin Yuan, Gongnin Tian, and the other two left while Xiao Chun stayed behind. After the four left, Tinzu looked at Xiao Chun and said, Xiao Chun, to be honest, I didn't expect you to break through to the Emperor realm so quickly, nor did I expect you to reach another universe through the universal black hole. Tinzu was indeed very surprised by Xiao Chun. Not only was he talented, but his luck was also extremely heaven-defying. However, this also showed that Xiao Chun was the son of fortune, the person with the most potential to become the world master of the great thousand world. Although luck seemed illusory, it really existed. In fact, there was no shortage of geniuses in this world. Who could be sure that their talent was the highest in the great thousand world? Even Xiao Chun would not say such a thing. After all, who knew who the most talented person in this world was? Most of the time, the most powerful masters were not the most talented, but in the end, they all reached the peak. What did this mean? This showed that success didn't only rely on talent. Although talent was indispensable, there were many other things besides talent. Only when these things were gathered in one person could that person truly reach the peak. Lin Fan was a man of great talent. He was a man of great talent. There was no doubt that Xiao Chun was such a person. He had talent, luck, and perseverance. That was why Xiao Chun had been able to get to where he was today, leaving Dao, Zhu, Xiao Xiao, Li Chun, and the others who had once been in the same rank as him, far behind him. The heavenly ancestor naturally had no objection to Xiao Chun becoming the world lord of the vast thousand world. After all, the vast thousand world really needed a world lord at the moment. Similarly, after the birth of a world lord, the heavenly ancestor would also benefit from it. It could be said that this was a win-win situation, and it was also an inevitable development process of one side of the universe. However, in Tinzu's opinion, it was indeed a little too early to let Xiao Chun come into contact with source strength. After all, Xiao Chun was only an Emperor Realm Master now. It was still too early, but this was the reality. Coupled with Lin Yuan and the other three's persuasion, Tinzu decided to let Xiao Chun come into contact with origin energy in advance. The Ancestor of Heaven paused for a moment before continuing. With your current level of cultivation, it's still too early for you to come into contact with the power of the origin, but there's nothing you can do about it now. However, Xiao Chun, you have to remember that the power of the origin is different from any power you've come into contact with before. Therefore, when you refine the power of the origin, you must act according to your ability. This is not a joke. To put it bluntly, the origin energy was the primordial energy of the universe. It was the source of all energy, the ancestor of all energy. Like the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the power of laws, and the rules of heaven and earth, they were all derived and transformed from the origin energy. To a martial artist, source energy was indeed a great treasure. However, this treasure was not something that anyone could possess. It could be said that source energy had already given birth to a trace of intelligence. Just like how a divine weapon chose its master, source energy would also choose its master. Unlike the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, if source energy did not approve of you, it would be the most violent energy in the world. If anyone dared to forcibly absorb and refine source energy, even if they were an ancestor realm master, they would definitely die. There was no doubt about this. If one wanted to refine source energy, it was no longer a matter of trying or risking one's life to succeed. Instead, it was necessary for source energy to choose and approve of you. Only then would it be possible. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan, Gongnan Tian, and the other three had never thought about the source energy of the Great Thousand World. They knew very well that it was impossible. The source energy of the Great Thousand World would only choose cultivators from the Great Thousand World, just like how it was impossible for Xiao Chun to obtain the source energy of the Hongmeng World and the Great World. Otherwise, even if Lin Yuan and the other three did not do it for themselves, Mu Jun, Lin Feng, and the other juniors would probably try to obtain some source energy from the Great Thousand World. He explained the matter of source energy to Xiao Chun. In short, if Xiao Chun did not get the approval of source energy, he absolutely could not forcibly refine it. Otherwise, he would definitely die. Xiao Chun, remember what I said. This is not a joke. Don't think that a miracle will happen if you try like before. In front of source energy, if you don't get its approval and forcibly refine it, you will definitely die. Do you understand? At the end, Tenzu reminded him again very seriously. In the face of origin energy, there was no way he could have any thoughts of risking his life, because it was simply impossible for him to do so. Seeing Tenzu's serious face, Xiaochen also nodded solemnly. I understand. Well, you have a good rest today. Tomorrow, I will take you to the source energy, Tenzu said. They stayed at Tenzu's place and had a good night's rest. The next morning, under Tenzu's lead, the two went all the way to the source energy. The source energy was the place where the world first formed. No one knew where it was. Anyway, only Tenzu could lead them there. To put it bluntly, Tenzu was the key to the source energy. Without Tenzu's lead, no one could come to the source energy. When they arrived at the entrance of the source energy, they saw a very small continent, like an island floating in the endless starry sky. Standing in the starry sky, the source energy was indeed like a paradise, lush and full of vitality. This was the entrance to the land of origin. Looking at the small piece of land in front of him, Xiao Chun was also curious. This seemingly small piece of land was the origin of the entire great wide world, and it contained the power of the origin of the great wide world. Remember what I said. Don't force anything. If things don't work out, withdraw as soon as possible. He reminded Xiao Chun again. The heavenly ancestor was not sure if Xiao Chun would succeed in the end. After all, no world lord had been born in the entire vast thousand worlds, which meant that no warrior of the vast thousand worlds had ever obtained the power of the origin. It could even be said that Xiao Chun was the first person to come to the source energy. Before this, Tenzu had never brought anyone to the source energy, including Jun Wuya. For a long time, the Sky Ancestor had not been able to find any warrior who was worthy of the origin energy, and the appearance of Xiao Chun had given the Tian clan hope for the first time. However, no one knew what the final result would be. Hearing the Celestial's words, Xiao Chun smiled and said, I know. Don't worry, I won't force myself. Knowing that Tenzu was afraid that he would force himself, Xiao Chun nodded in agreement. In response, Tenzu nodded slightly, and then motioned for Xiao Chun to go in alone. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 25:10. Following Tenzu's words, Xiao Chun stepped onto the land of origin, which was the origin of the entire great wide world. He did not encounter any obstacles during the process of entering the land of origin, and everything went smoothly. The moment Xiao Chun stepped onto the land of origin, he immediately felt an indescribable power enveloping him. It wasn't spirit chi, nor was it the power of law. However, it had the feeling of spirit chi and law power at the same time. It seemed that this was the power of origin that the Sky Ancestor had mentioned. This was the primordial power of the universe, and it was also the purest power. Being enveloped by the origin power, Xiao Chun could not help but feel a little shocked. Following Tenzu's words, Xiao Chun did not forcibly refine the origin power. Instead, he walked all the way to the core of the land of origin. The land of origin was not large, so it did not take long for Xiao Chun to arrive at the center of the land of origin. Here, Xiao Chun finally saw the true face of the origin power. A cloud of black mist was suspended in midair. This was the origin power of the great wide world. It was the first power that accompanied the emergence of the great wide world, and it was also the source of all power. There did not seem to be anything special about it, but the deep darkness made it seem unfathomable. He gently reached out, wanting to touch the power of the origin. However, to Xiao Chun's surprise, he was unable to touch it at all. Every time Xiao Chun wanted to reach out to touch it, his arms seemed to have passed through space. It was as if he and the origin power were not in the same space at all. It was clearly right in front of him, but it was also far away. Looking at the origin power in front of him, Xiao Chun could not touch it no matter how hard he tried. In this regard, Xiao Chun felt helpless. It seemed that the origin power did not recognize him. Just as Tenzu had said, the origin power was different from other powers. In the past, whether it was spiritual qi or the power of laws, such a situation would not occur. However, the origin power was different. It had its own intelligence and would choose its own master. Only those who were chosen by the origin power could refine it. Otherwise, everything would be in vain. Not to mention whether one could touch the origin power. Even if one succeeded, forcibly refining it would only lead to death. Is it because my cultivation is too low? Xiao Chun thought to himself as he looked at the origin power in front of him. It was clearly within reach, but he could not touch it no matter what. Xiao Chun was being despised, and his cultivation base was too low. This made him feel rather helpless. Looking at the cloud of black mist in front of him, Xiao Chun did not know how to subdue it. Tenza did not tell Xiao Chun how to subdue the origin power. Or rather, there was no way at all. Everything could only be decided by the origin power. External forces could not interfere with it. Xiao Chun was not willing to give up, so he simply sat down cross-legged and looked at the origin power in front of him. A look of determination appeared in his eyes as he said, "In the entire great thousand world, no one else is worthy of you except me. I am your best choice." Although Xiao Chen's words sounded a little arrogant, they were full of confidence in himself. This was also true. In the entire great thousand world, Xiao Chun was indeed the most outstanding person. Even among the experts of the older generation, no one could compare to Xiao Chun. Putting aside talent, in terms of strength alone, in the current great thousand world, probably only Jun Wuya could be said to be stronger than Xiao Chun. As for the other sovereigns, Xiao Chun was not afraid of them. However, although Jun Wuya was strong, the origin power would definitely not choose him. There was no other reason than that Jun Wuya was too old, and his potential was far inferior to Xiao Chen's. Even if Jun Wuya absorbed the origin power, it would be difficult for Jun Wuya to become the world lord. At most, he would reach the level of Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others. Therefore, Xiao Chun was confident that he was the only person in the great thousand world who was worthy of the origin power. Xiao Chun was confident that no one else could. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the origin power in front of him moved slightly, as if a person was shaking his body. Then, a fist-sized ball of origin power was separated and slowly floated in front of Xiao Chun. This ball of origin power was very small, at most a drop in the ocean. Looking at this ball of origin power that was only the size of a fist floating in front of him, Xiao Chun was stunned at first, but soon he smiled bitterly and helplessly. "Do you think that I'm only worthy of this little bit of origin power?" The origin power could not speak, and it was impossible for it to communicate with Xiao Chun. However, Xiao Chun still guessed the meaning of the origin power. At present, Xiao Chun obviously could not be fully recognized by the origin power, but Xiao Chun was indeed the most outstanding warrior in the great thousand world. Therefore, Xiao Chun was given this ball of origin power. It could not be considered recognition, but it could be said to be a kind of hope. It hoped that Xiao Chun would have the qualifications to become the world lord one day. At that time, the origin power would really recognize Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun felt a little helpless, but this small ball of origin power should not be underestimated. Although it looked like a drop in the ocean, it was definitely of great help to the current Xiao Chun. With a bitter smile, Xiao Chun no longer hesitated and slowly stretched out his hand. This time, Xiao Chun touched the ball of origin power smoothly. After sensing Xiao Chen's touch, the ball of origin power was like a happy child, and it began to dance along Xiao Chen's arm. It was very fast, but it always surrounded Xiao Chun as if it was sizing up Xiao Chun at a close distance. In this regard, Xiao Chun could not help but laugh. There was such a wonderful energy in this world. It indeed had its own consciousness, and it was completely different from other energies. It danced happily around Xiao Chun. In this regard, Xiao Chun did not stop it. After a full quarter of an hour, the ball of origin power arrived in front of Xiao Chun. Looking at the ball of origin power in front of him, Xiao Chun felt like he was being watched. The man and the ball of black mist looked at each other like this, but in just a few seconds, the ball of origin power directly entered Xiao Chen's body. Just as Tenzu said, if the origin power recognized you, then refining it would be twice the result with half the effort. As the ball of origin power entered his body, Xiao Chun did not feel anything at first. But soon, Xiao Chun felt that the meridians in his body seemed to be frozen in an instant, and the spiritual power could not flow at all. Instead, the ball of origin power began to flow along the meridians in his body, and Xiao Chun could not control it at all. Please collect monthly vote recommend. Chapter 25:11. When the fist-sized source strength entered Xiao Chen's body, it began to wander uncontrollably within Xiao Chen's body. As this source strength wandered about, Xiao Chen felt as if he was about to be frozen. He felt a bone-chilling cold constantly emerging from the depths of his body. It wasn't just his physical body. Xiao Chen even felt as if his soul was about to be frozen. It was reasonable to say that at Xiao Chen's level, he should have been able to resist any kind of extreme cold or heat. However, when faced with this ball of origin power, Xiao Chun had no way of dealing with it. The extreme cold made Xiao Chun feel as if he had fallen into hell. And this was just a fist-sized source strength. It was hard to imagine what would happen if this source strength entered his body. It would probably only take an instant for him to be completely frozen. No wonder Tenzu had repeatedly warned him not to take any chances when refining source strength. If he didn't gain the approval of the source strength, then he would only end up dead. The source strength in Xiao Chen's body had already acknowledged him, but Xiao Chen was still in so much pain that he wished he was dead. If he forcibly refined a source strength that didn't acknowledge him, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Extreme cold, but this pain didn't last long. Soon, Xiao Chun felt a scorching heat, as if he was about to melt. First, it was extreme cold, then heat. The process of refining source strength could be said to be extremely painful, but Xiao Chun couldn't control it. He could only let the source strength wander about in his body. However, as Xiao Chun endured the excruciating pain, he also discovered that as the origin power continued to flow through his body, the ball of origin power, which was originally only the size of a fist, was constantly being consumed and integrated into his body. Black impurities constantly overflowed from Xiao Chen's pores, and at the same time, a strong stench was emitted. It was hard to imagine that there would still be so many impurities in his body after reaching the minor emperor realm. It was as if his body was being refined, becoming purer and purer. His cultivation base was also increasing along with the consumption of his source energy. However, the source energy did not seem to be focused on increasing his cultivation base. Instead, it seemed to be reshaping him, making him more suitable for cultivation. Origin energy was transforming him. Xiao Chun was overjoyed when he sensed this. Compared to increasing his cultivation base, transforming his body was clearly more important. After all, only by doing so could he go further. Xiao Chun carefully sensed the origin energy in his body. He didn't need to do anything now, nor could he do anything. Everything could only be controlled by the origin energy. Just as Shun Mu was refining the origin power in the Great Devil World, which was not far from the Great Thousand World, on a continent in the middle, this continent was shrouded in thick black clouds all year round, and there was no light at all. And this continent was the headquarters of the Great Devil World's overlord, the Demon Abyss. As a universe controlled by Demon Dao martial artists, Demon Dao martial artists were the mainstream in the Great Devil World, while other martial artists were regarded as heretics. Compared to the Great Thousand World, the Great Devil World was obviously more chaotic. However, they also had their own rules, and that was the strong were respected, Without so many rules and regulations like the Great Thousand World, there was only one way to survive in the Great Devil World, and that was to be strong. Only by being strong could one control one's own fate. Blocking the road, robbing, bullying the weak, and slaughtering an entire family for a little bit of cultivation resources were not rare in the Great Devil World. It could even be said to be extremely common. It was more direct and more brutal. This was the law of survival in the Great Devil World. At this time, in a dark hall in the Demon Abyss, a group of experts gathered here. The leader was a black-haired young man. His ink-black hair was casually draped behind his back. He had a handsome face, but he gave people a chilling feeling. The young man was the Lord of the Demon Abyss and also the World Master of the Great Devil World, Mo Lin. Looking at Mo He, Mo Chi, and He Yang, who had returned from the Great Thousand World, Mo Lin's face was expressionless. Fail. Hearing Mo Lin's words, Mo He and the other two lowered their heads and did not dare to look at him. This time, they had messed up the matter in the Great Thousand World, and the three of them felt ashamed. Looking at their expressions and the fact that they kept their heads down without saying a word, Mo Lin had obviously guessed the result. However, he still asked, did people from other universes interfere? It's the Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall. Hearing this, Mo He replied for the first time. Cloud Palace, Immortal Hall. Hearing Mo He's reply, Mo Lin was not angry at all. On the contrary, he revealed a faint smile and said, the Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall attacked at the same time. Ah, it seems that we were careless. Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian, these two fellows actually came together. Obviously, Mo Lin was familiar with the Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall. Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian had been in contact for a long time. After all, they were not in the same camp. Naturally, the two sides had fought many times. Since the Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall had attacked at the same time, it was understandable that Mo He and the other two had failed. After all, it was difficult for the Demon Abyss to fight against the Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall at the same time. However, it was obviously not Mo Lin's intention to give up. After he finished speaking, Mo Lin's gaze fell on Mo He and the other two again. He then said flatly, you're giving up just like that? Lord, Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian are still in the Great Thousand World. Hearing this, Mo Chi said helplessly, Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian were top-notch experts. In the Great Thousand World, the Demon Abyss basically had no chance unless the Demon Abyss turned out in full force, and even Mo Lin personally took action. However, in this case, Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian from the Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall obviously would not stand by and do nothing. They definitely had no chance in a head-on confrontation. However, hearing Mo Chi's words, Mo Lin smiled. Can they continue to stay in the Great Thousand World? Lord, what do you mean? Hearing this, Mo He seemed to have thought of something and asked Mo Lin. In the face of Mo He's question, Mo Lin continued to smile and said, Lin Yuan and the other two can't stay in the Great Thousand World for too long. Moreover, there are some things that they don't have to deal with personally. Is the Great Thousand World a monolithic entity now? After hearing Mo Lin's words, a strange look flashed across the eyes of Mo He and the other two. Obviously, they understood what Mo Lin meant. Immediately, Mo He spoke first. Lord, I'm willing to make a trip back to the Great Thousand World. This time, I'll definitely be able to take down the Great Thousand World. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 25:12. Upon hearing Mo Lin's words, Mo He immediately understood what he meant. The battle between the good and evil in the Great Thousand World had just ended. Obviously, there were many things waiting to be done in the Great Thousand World. Upon hearing Mo Lin's words, Mo He immediately understood what he meant. The battle between the good and evil in the Great Thousand World had just ended. Obviously, there were many things waiting to be done in the Great Thousand World. Although Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian were in charge of the Great Thousand World, there were no overlords in the Great Thousand World. As such, there were bound to be many conflicts within the Great Thousand World. Mo Lin's intention was simple. He wanted the Great Thousand World to be in chaos. Upon hearing Mo He's words, Mo Lin shook his head and said, "You don't have to go personally. Use your demonic avatars. The three of you will do the same. Otherwise, Mo He and the other two would use their demonic avatars. After all, Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian were still in the Great Thousand World. It was hard to guarantee that Mo He and the other two would not be able to hide their actions from them. This time, although Mo He and the other two had narrowly escaped, luck was not always so good. Even if one of them died in the Great Thousand World, it would be a blow to the demon abyss. Therefore, Mo Lin asked the three of them to use their demonic avatars. Although the demonic avatars were important to demonic cultivators, it was nothing compared to their own lives. In this way, even if something happened in the Great Thousand World, Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others would only be able to kill one of the three demonic avatars. It would not be a big deal. Mo He understood what Mo Lin meant and immediately nodded. Upon seeing this, Mo Lin waved his hand and said, "In that case, make preparations as soon as possible. Even if we have to give up, we can't let Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall get the Great Thousand World so easily." Mo Lin knew that behind the Great Thousand World was the game between the alliance of the righteous sects and Dark Age. However, no matter what, Mo Lin did not want to see Cloud Palace and Immortal Hall get the Great Thousand World so easily. At the very least, he had to create some trouble for them. Upon hearing Mo Lin's words, Mo He and the other two bowed respectfully and then left the hall. This time, Mo Lin only allowed the three of them to use their demon avatars to head to the Great Thousand World. This was mainly for safety reasons. Of course, it would be better if they did not suffer any losses. After all, it was not easy to create a demon avatar. Back in the Great Thousand World, both Mo He and Mo Chi had already lost a devil image avatar. This caused them great heartache. The demon abyss was still unwilling to give up. In the Cloud Palace of the Great Thousand World, ever since Xiao Chun went to Tenzu to cultivate, Dao Ju, Xiao Xiao, Li Chun, and even Dan Xin came to the Cloud Palace. After the Saber Sect, the Heavenly Policy Hall, and the Moon Palace expressed their willingness to submit to the Cloud Palace. The Dan Valley also expressed their willingness to acknowledge the Cloud Palace's position as the Overlord. The four of them had naturally come because they had received an invitation from the Cloud Palace. The Cloud Palace naturally had to win the hearts of the powers that chose to support them. But how? The best way was to increase his strength. Coincidentally, after Junwia had gone into seclusion, Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the other two had the intention to help the rest of the people in the Cloud Palace increase their strength. Of course, Lin Yuan and the other three valued Xin Yuan Ling and Long Qing the most. After all, Xin Yuan Ling and Long Qing were definitely the most talented in the Cloud Palace. Since Lin Yuan and the others had this idea, the Cloud Palace would do the Saber Sect and the other three sects a favor. The Saber Sect and the other three great sects would naturally not refuse. What a joke. Only a fool would refuse the personal guidance of an ancestor stage expert. If it was not for the fact that the Cloud Palace had not invited them, Dao Xiong and the others would have come personally. In the Cloud Palace, because Xiao Chun was not around, Xin Yuan Ling and Long Qing were naturally in charge of entertaining Dao Ju and the others. Although they did not have any official positions in the Cloud Palace, everyone knew about the relationship between Xin Yuan Ling and Long Qing and Xiao Chun. Therefore, the two of them had a very high status in the Cloud Palace. In Xin Yuan Ling's cave dwelling, everyone sat together in a circle. Tomorrow, they would officially start cultivating with Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others. Naturally, everyone was a little excited about this. Brother Xin Yuan, tell us about the Hongmeng world. I heard that it is much more powerful than our Great Thousand World. Dao Ju looked at Xin Yuan Ling curiously and said, among everyone present, only Xin Yuan Ling and Long Qing had been to other universes outside the Great Thousand World. Dao Ju and the others were naturally very interested in the outside world, especially when they heard that the Hongmeng world was much more powerful than the Great Thousand World. They were filled with longing and thought that if they had the chance in the future, they would definitely personally go to the Hongmeng world and the other universes to take a good look. After so many years of being together, everyone was already very familiar with each other. When they heard Dao Ju's words, Xin Yuanling briefly explained the Hongmeng world to the others. After hearing about the strength of the Hongmeng world, Dao Ju and the others were secretly amazed. Compared to the Hongmeng world, the Great Thousand World was indeed much weaker. However, they were obviously most concerned about the world's strength. According to Brother Xin Yuan, the key reason why our Great Thousand World is inferior to the Hongmeng world is that there is no world master. That's right. Therefore, the Great Thousand World must give birth to a world master in order to compete with other universes. Xin Yuanling nodded and said, speaking of the world master of the Great Thousand World, the few of them subconsciously thought of Shao Chun. If they were to talk about who was most likely to become the world master of the Great Thousand World, it would undoubtedly be Shao Chun because no one was more suitable than Shao Chun. While everyone was casually chatting, on the other side, Mutian Mountain. During this period of time, Yin Tianyi had also privately contacted many forces. However, it was a pity that the results were minimal. There was no other way. After all, which force dared to go against the Sword Sect? The world had long been intimidated by the Sword Sect. Some people were even sincerely convinced by the Sword Sect. Not to mention going against the Sword Sect, they could not wait to hug the thick thigh of the Sword Sect. Naturally, Yin Tianyi found it difficult to accept such an outcome because according to the current situation, the Sword Sect was already unstoppable. Yin Tianyi's actions were undoubtedly like trying to stop a car with a fat arm. There is simply no meaning to it. Just as Yin Tianyi was secretly vexed, the demonic avatars of Mo He and the other two suddenly descended on Mutian Mountain and appeared in front of Yin Tianyi. Yin Tianyi was originally deep in thought when Mo He and the other two suddenly appeared. In response, Yin Tianyi was stunned. He then looked at Mo He and the other two warily and asked, "Who are you? How dare you barge into my Mutian Mountain? Oh, little fellow, you have quite a temper. We are not from the Great Thousand World, and the purpose of this trip is to help you." Mo He smiled slightly and took the initiative to introduce himself. Yin Tianyi was stunned when he heard Mo He's words. Not from the Great Thousand World? In that case, they were from other universes? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 25:13. When Yin Tianyi heard Mo He's words, he still looked at the trio with vigilance. He couldn't help it. It was impossible for Yin Tianyi to not be nervous when the trio suddenly appeared. Moreover, Mo He claimed to be from another universe, which made Yin Tianyi even more vigilant. When Yin Tianyi heard Mo He's words, he still looked at the trio with vigilance. He couldn't help it. It was impossible for Yin Tianyi to not be nervous when the trio suddenly appeared. Moreover, Mo He claimed to be from another universe, which made Yin Tianyi even more vigilant. Mo He didn't mind when he saw Yin Tianyi's nervous look. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Our guests are here. Aren't you going to invite us to have a seat?" Yin Tianyi hesitated for a moment, but he still made an inviting gesture to Mo He and the other two. With Yin Tianyi's eyesight, he naturally couldn't see through Mo He and the other two. It was because he couldn't see through their cultivation that Yin Tianyi appeared so nervous. After taking a seat, Mo He smiled and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Mo He from the great demonic world. As I said before, I'm here to help you." "Help me? May I ask what you mean?" Yin Tianyi asked softly. He had already changed the way he addressed Mo He and the other two. It couldn't be helped. In front of Mo He and the other two, Yin Tianyi was indeed under a lot of pressure. Of course, Yin Tianyi obviously didn't know that the trio in front of him was just a demonic image clone. If they had come in person, the pressure Yin Tianyi would have to endure would be at least several times stronger. Yin Tianyi's attitude was still respectful. Mohi smiled and said, "It's very simple. I'll help you deal with the sword sect." Mohi and the other two had learned a little about the situation in the Great Thousand World. After all, this wasn't a secret and could be easily found in the Great Thousand World. Now that the sword sect had received the full support of experts from other universes, and it was also a sect with two emperors, it was about to become the overlord of the universe. Moreover, four of the top 10 Ling Tian sects had already chosen to submit to the sword sect. Moke and the other two easily obtained this information. Then, the three of them unintentionally found out that Yun Tianyi was secretly contacting members of other forces, intending to rebel against the sword sect together. After hearing this news, Mohi immediately knew that Yun Tianyi and Mu Tianshan were the people he was looking for. First of all, Mu Tian Mountain was not weak. After all, it was one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects. Although it could not be compared to the sword sect, it was not impossible for them to win if they operated it well. That was why Mo and the other two had come looking for them. Apart from Yun Tianyi, no one else knew about their arrival, including his father, Yun Shun. Although the Dantian seemed to have been assimilated by the demonic Qi, in reality, the two forces still existed in the Dantian. It was just that the demonic Qi was temporarily suppressing the spiritual power. This was also why the demonic seed could allow one's strength to increase by leaps and bounds in a short period of time, but would be completely destroyed after a long period of time. It was because the demonic seed couldn't always suppress the spiritual power in the Dantian. Once the two forces completely erupted, it was enough to crush a person's meridians and internal organs. Yin Tianyi still didn't know about this. He felt that his Dantian was being assimilated bit by bit. After a day, the demonic seed was successfully formed in Yun Tianyi's body. At this time, Helmut Mo said, "The demonic seed has been formed. Next, I'll help you increase your cultivation." Hearing Mo's words, Yin Tianyi was overjoyed. Then, he felt the terrifying demonic qi continuously enter his body and quickly flow through his meridians. This demonic qi naturally came from Mohi. As a complete Ancestor Realm expert, it wasn't difficult for Mohi to forcefully increase Yun Tianyi's cultivation. For a moment, Yun Tianyi could clearly feel that his cultivation was constantly rising, all the way to the Emperor Realm. In just a few hours, he had already reached the limit of the complete End Realm. Such a speed of improvement made Yun Tianyi feel incomparably refreshed. At the same time, it made him even more certain of the choice in his heart. This was power. This was what Yin Tianyi had always wanted. For this, Yin Tianyi didn't hesitate to fall into the demonic path, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 25:15. In just a few hours, Yun Tianyi's cultivation had already reached the grand perfection End Realm. This kind of cultivation speed was something Yun Tianyi had never experienced before in his life. As he carefully sensed the increase in his strength, Yun Tianyi felt even more fortunate that he had made the right choice. Only with strength could one obtain everything. As for whether it was the demon path or the righteous path, Yun Tianyi no longer cared about it. So what if it was the demon path or the righteous path? Just as Yin Tianyi was secretly feeling excited, Mohi suddenly said, "Calm your mind and focus. This old master will help you break through to the Emperor Realm." Using the demon seed, it wasn't too difficult for Mohi to help Yin Tianyi break through to the Emperor Realm. After all, Yin Tianyi wasn't relying on his own strength to break through. It could be said that he was forcefully breaking through, and there would be major hidden dangers in the future. As long as Yin Tianyi didn't resist, Mohi would definitely be able to help him break through. Hearing Mohi's words, Yin Tianyi no longer resisted. With the help of Mohi's powerful demon qi, Yun Tiany's cultivation easily broke through to the Emperor realm. Feeling the powerful aura of the Emperor realm, Yun Tiany was in a good mood. He couldn't help but want to roar towards the sky. This is the strength of an Emperor realm master. I, Yun Tiany, have finally broken through to the Emperor realm. The Emperor realm was once Yun Tiany's dream. In fact, even without Mo-he, with Yun Tiany's talent, he would have broken through to the Emperor realm sooner or later. Moreover, he would have broken through to the Emperor realm with his own strength. However, Yun Tiany obviously couldn't wait that long because he wanted to catch up to Xiao Chun. Obviously, ordinary methods wouldn't work. After all, Xiao Chun's talent was above Yun Tiany's. Moreover, Xiao Chun was a person with great fortune. He had many more opportunities than Yun Tiany. Therefore, Yun Tiany estimated that he wouldn't be able to catch up to Xiao Chun even if he cultivated normally. He could only find another way. Now that he had succeeded, and his cultivation had broken through to the Emperor realm in such a short time, Yun Tiany's confidence soared. He finally had the ability to compete with Xiao Chun. However, he had just broken through to the Emperor realm, so he obviously wasn't qualified to compete with Xiao Chun. But even with the demon seed, he wasn't going to let Yun Tiany break through again. Firstly, Yun Tiany couldn't bear more demon chi, and secondly, he had just broken through to the Emperor realm. If he wanted to continue breaking through, even with Mo-he's help, it would be much more difficult. The best way was to let Yun Tiany immerse himself in his cultivation for a while and completely adapt to the strength of an Emperor realm master. He was completely blinded by power. Looking at Yun Tiany in front of him, he was secretly amused, but he didn't point it out. Only by doing so could he better control Yun Tiany, and even the entire Mutian mountain. Soon, under Yun Tiany's lead, the group of 4 arrived at Yun Shen's residence. Seeing Mo-he's trio for the first time, Yun Shen was also stunned. However, after hearing Yun Tiany's words, Yun Shen's face turned completely gloomy. "Father, Senior Mo-he and the others are here to help us. Your son has already broken through to the Emperor realm, so this is an opportunity." Yun Tiany chattered in Yun Sheng's ear, trying his best to persuade Yun Shen to submit to Mo-he and the others. Hearing Yun Tiany's words, Yun Shen also sensed Yun Tiany's cultivation. It was indeed at the Emperor realm, but the current Yun Tiany's aura was completely different from before. With Yun Shen's eyesight, he could naturally see that Yun Tiany had completely fallen into the demon Dao. With demon chi all over his body, Yun Shen was naturally more cautious than Yun Tiany. He didn't give an answer immediately. Even though Yun Tiany had broken through to the Emperor realm with Mo-he's help, Yun Shen was still hesitating. After a long silence, Yun Shen looked at Mo-he and the others and cupped his fists. 3 seniors, my Mutian mountain has submitted to the great demon world. In the future, will I have to offer the entire great thousand world to the great demon world? As Yun Shen, he clearly thought of many more problems than Yun Tiany. He also knew that once he submitted, although he could obtain many benefits, he would definitely have to pay a price. After all, there was no one in this world who would help you for no reason, especially when both parties did not know each other. Please add, recommend, and vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 25:16. Yun Shen was obviously unwilling to sacrifice the entire Great Thousand World. This was because even if Mutian Mountain became the overlord of the Great Thousand World in the end, they would still be a pawn in someone else's hands. Yun Shen was obviously unwilling to sacrifice the entire Great Thousand World. This was because even if Mutian Mountain became the overlord of the Great Thousand World in the end, they would still be a pawn in someone else's hands. Therefore, Yun Shen hesitated when he saw Mo-he and the other 2. However, Mo-he smiled and said, "There's no need for that. The great demonic world is not interested in the Great Thousand World. The reason why we are taking action is because of Immortal Hall and Cloud Palace. You can understand it as the great demonic world not being willing to let a mortal hall and cloud palace obtain the great thousand world. Emohi had no intention of making the great thousand world submit. Of course, no one knew whether he meant it or not. However, Yun Tianyi and Yun Shun had already planted the demonic seed in them and were about to die. What would happen in the future have to do with them? Yun Shun did not know what Emohi was thinking. When he heard what Emohi said, his expression turned slightly better. He could accept it. In the end, under Yun Tianyi's persuasion, Yun Shun agreed to submit to Emohi and the other two. Of course, Emohi and the other two would help Mutian Mountain increase its strength, but Mutian Mountain would also become a weapon in their hands to deal with the sword sect. Emohi and the other two did not intend to deal with the sword sect directly. After all, Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian were not to be trifled with. Not to mention that Emohi and the other two only sent their demonic avatars. Even if they sent their actual bodies, they would not be able to deal with the sword sect. Therefore, Emohi and the other two did not intend to attack directly. Instead, they wanted to use Mutian Mountain as a form of exchange. Yinshin naturally had no objections to this. After all, Mutian Mountain and the sword sect were on opposite sides. Based on the father and son's previous choice, even without Emohi and the other three, Mutian Mountain would not choose to submit to the sword sect. As Yinshin nodded, the smiles in the eyes of Emohi and the other two grew even wider. Emohi then smiled and said, "That's right. Next, this old man will help you break through to the ancestor stage. However, forcefully breaking through to the ancestor stage is not an easy task. Some preparations will be required." Yun Shun was an Emperor Realm Master, so even if he had planted a demon seed and relied on this almost suicidal method of cultivation, it would still not be easy for him to break through to the ancestor realm. So he still needed to make some preparations. As for what he was going to prepare, he didn't say, because if he did, Yin Shan would probably back out. To put it simply, if Yin Shan wanted to break through to the progenitor realm, other than planting a demonic seed and obtaining Mo's help, he also needed to burn his lifespan. Yes, utilizing Yun Chen's own lifespan to forcefully assist him in breaking through into the universe enlightened ancestral realm was the only way. Of course, once he did this, then Yinshin would obviously not be able to live for long. But so what? From the moment the demonic seed was planted, the outcome was already decided. Even a demon cultivator wouldn't plant a demonic seed in his own body, which was enough to explain everything. After all, this was a life-threatening thing. So who would plant a demonic seed in their own body? Yin Shun and Yun Tianyi didn't know what the outcome of their choice would be, nor did they realize what kind of disaster their choice would bring to Mutian Mountain. At this time, Yun Shun and Yun Tianyi had already fallen under the temptation of great strength. Mutian Mountain had secretly stood together with Mo and the other two, and the sword sect obviously didn't know about this. Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others also didn't notice that Mo and the other two had returned to the Great Thousand World. At this time, in the sword sect, Xin Yuanling, Long Qing, Dao Zhu, Xiao Xiao, and Li Chun were cultivating with Lin Hu and Yuluo. Having two Ancestor Realm Masters personally know that everyone was cultivating was naturally something that everyone wished for. Time passed day by day, and the Great Thousand World gradually regained its peace. The Sword Sect didn't intend to be aggressive and didn't forcefully control the entire Great Thousand World. The Sword Sect's position as the Overlord wasn't recognized by all forces, and the Sword Sect didn't seem to care about this at all. They didn't plan to take any further action. However, many forces knew that this wasn't because the Sword Sect was magnanimous, and it wasn't because the Sword Sect was kind. Instead, it was because the Sword Sect didn't have the time to do anything after the war between the good and evil had just ended. Sect Master Xiao Chun was in seclusion in the land of Source Energy, and Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and even Song Xing were busy cultivating. With Ancestor Realm Masters like Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian intentionally helping to improve their strength, the Sword Sect naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. As for the matters of the Great Thousand World, when they were free, the sword sect would naturally deal with it. Moreover, Lin Yuan and Gong Nantian also said that they wouldn't stay in the Great Thousand World for too long. After they finished teaching the sword sect, they would leave. Who would be willing to miss such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Naturally, it was clear which one was more important. Everyone in Swords Gate was busy with their cultivation. Under such a peaceful atmosphere, a month quickly passed. Chapter 25:17. A pill personally refined by the palace master of the Nine Palaces Medicine Palace was definitely a supreme treasure. Looking at the Longan-sized pill in their hands, Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others couldn't help but reveal a hint of excitement. A pill personally refined by the palace master of the Nine Palaces Medicine Palace was definitely a supreme treasure. Looking at the Longan-sized pill in their hands, Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others couldn't help but reveal a hint of excitement. They were finally about to break through to the Emperor Realm. In just a month, under the guidance of Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others, as well as the support of various cultivation resources that they had never seen before, Xinyuan Ling and the others had made rapid progress. However, with such rapid progress, Lin Yuan and Nangong Guan had solemnly reminded Xinyuan Ling that Long Qing and the others must prioritize stabilizing their cultivation after breaking through to the Emperor Realm. They must not make any further breakthroughs, otherwise their foundation would be unstable. This breakthrough to the Emperor Realm was indeed a little rushed for Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others, but there was no other way. Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others didn't have much time, so this was the only way. However, Lin Yuan and the others wouldn't directly destroy the future of Xinyuan Ling and the others like Mo He and the others. Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others didn't have any hidden dangers for Xinyuan Ling and the others, so there was no need to worry. According to the instructions of Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others, Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others sat cross-legged and swallowed the pills in their hands, beginning their breakthroughs. The breakthroughs of Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others were no secret in the sword sect. Many people knew that Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others were in seclusion to break through to the Emperor Realm. So many people were looking forward to it. One had to know that if they succeeded this time, the Great Thousand World would have 4 more Emperor Realm Masters at once. This was something unimaginable in the past. In the past, the Emperor Realm was the top figure in the Great Thousand World, but now, after the Great Thousand World was connected to other universes, the Emperor Realm no longer seemed so unreachable because there were Ancestor Realm Masters above the Emperor Realm, and above the Ancestor Realm Masters, there were World Masters. Of course, there were not many cultivators in the great wide world who knew about World Masters. To them, the Progenitor Realm was an existence that left them in the dust. Many disciples of the Sword Sect were waiting for the results of Xinyuan Ling and the other 3. As for Tsang Xing and the other deputy sect masters, after this period of cultivation, they had also gained a lot.